Chapter 1965. Your friends, 3. What do you want me to repay? Lung Ruoxue, who happened to hear these words when they returned to the room, asked curiously. To repay his kindness, swear, let this guy tell you about your master. The evildoer said with a gentle smile. You know my master? Hearing the demon's words, Lung Ruoxue was even more curious. It seemed like there was more than one person who knew her master. Of course I do. Huan Chen's cheeky smile disappeared and he said seriously. Then can you tell me? Lung Ruoxue looked at Huan Chen with anticipation. Master, don't worry, I'll tell you. Huan Chen promised. Then he took out a transparent crystal from somewhere and handed it to Lung Ruoxue. Lung Ruoxue received the crystal with a face full of question marks. Then she looked at illusion dust, not understanding what was going on. At this moment, the transparent crystal in Lung Ruoxue's hand suddenly burst out with a strong light. Following that, an illusionary figure appeared in front of the three of them with a smile. Master! Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes were filled with tears as she stared at the not-so-solid figure and called out softly. That figure was none other than her incomparably handsome and noble master. Master, I finally have the chance to see you again. Huan Chen's eyes were filled with tears as he looked at you with excitement. Hearing Huan Chen's words, Lung Ruoxue turned to look at him. Her heart was filled with question marks. She knew that the master that Huan Chen was referring to was definitely his previous master. However, wasn't his previous master the God Lord who had already fallen from the God world? Why did he call his master master? At this moment, Lung Ruoxue had yet to make the connection between her master and the owner of fantasy dust. Hence, her beautiful face was filled with confusion. Swear, in both your master and the previous owner of dream dust. You should be able to guess my identity by now. You smiled. The first time he saw Lung Ruoxue, she was still a little child. Now that he saw her growing up, he was very pleased. You're a divine master? Lung Ruoxue was a little dumbfounded. She had never thought that her master would be a divine master. Even though Qing Ju had always told her how powerful her master was, she had never thought of it in that way. Yes, but I've already fallen. The me you see now is just a trace of consciousness I left behind. You said with a faint smile. He then continued, Shui, you've already refined the origin of chaos. From now on, the divine world is in your hands. I don't want to. The divine realm is masteress. Don't even think about escaping responsibility. I won't carry this huge burden for you. When Lung Ruoxue heard her master's words, she immediately objected vehemently. Even though she wasn't sure what the origin of chaos was and what it had to do with the God world, she didn't want to accept her master's words, even though the truth was that her master had already passed away. But she just didn't want to accept it. Swear, a silly girl. Since you became my disciple and the master of the universal bracelet, everything was already destined. Moreover, you are the master recognized by the origin of chaos, so everything in the divine world is naturally related to you. You can't get rid of it. You sighed. The one who wants to get rid of all this is master, not me. Lung Ruoxue said, a little upset. As long as she thought about how her master was here to say his last words, her heart would feel as if it was being cut by a knife. Although she had not spent much time with this cheap master, her master had loved her like a daughter. So, she was not willing to see her master disappear forever. Silly girl, master has already fallen long ago. Of master's 3 disciples, only you have the chaotic body, so master can only place this heavy burden on you. I hope you don't disappoint master. You said in a heavy tone. Master. Hearing her master say this, Lung Ruoxue didn't know how to rebut. More importantly, she was afraid that her master would be sad, but she didn't want her master to disappear forever. Little girl, you won't let master down, right? You saw Lung Ruoxue's dilemma and pressed on while the iron was hot. Of course, I don't want to disappoint master. However, the divine world already has a divine master. Thus, I don't need to worry about it. Right now, I only want to know how to save master. Lung Ruoxue said after some thought. As far as she knew, the current divine master of the divine world was her master's younger sister. Therefore, she couldn't understand why her master would say such things since the divine world was managed by someone. Could it be that they were siblings who didn't get along? Lung Ruoxue made wild guesses. In reality, she could tell a thing or two from Huan Chen's attitude towards the divine master. However, at that time, she had not known that her master was the previous divine master of the divine world, so she naturally did not care about her master's feelings and could make wild guesses. But now, she did not want to think that way. Shuer. Lung Ruoxue's words made Yes' heart soften. He then said, only those who have been acknowledged by the origin of chaos and possess the universal bracelet can become the true master of the divine world. Wu Ling doesn't have the chaotic body, so she can't become the true master of the divine world. Only you are qualified. But Lung Ruoxue was a little hesitant. Actually, she wanted to ask, the current god master of the god world is your sister. If I accept master's dying wish, wouldn't I become that woman's enemy? Although the two of them already had some conflicts, it was not to the point where they would fight to the death. More importantly, if she didn't know the relationship between that woman and her master, she wouldn't have any pressure dealing with her. But now, she was a little conflicted. Shuer, you don't have to worry about the Miwu miasma. She's not the rightful divine master, and the rules of heaven and earth won't acknowledge her. Furthermore, you could see the doubt in Lung Ruoxue's heart and explained. However, he did not finish his sentence. As for the other things, he would let others tell Shuer. He found it hard to say. The timing he had arranged had not really come. In fact, he had appeared a little too early. Seeing that her master seemed to be hiding something, Lung Ruoxue was understanding and did not continue the topic. She changed the topic and said, Master, is there any way to save you? Tell me. There is no other way. Shuer, Master's soul has already dispersed and disappeared from this world a long time ago. However, Master is quite gratified to see your growth now. The only pity is that Master won't be able to see you become a true expert, but Master believes that you won't let Master down. Master will give you his blessings. You said with a smile. Then, he turned to look at the evildoer and said, You have to treat my disciple well. You're not allowed to bully her. I don't need you to say that. The demon said in a bad mood when he heard Yes' words. Of course I have to say it. Im Shui Er's master. However, now that you've become my disciple's man, shouldn't you also call me master? Come, let's hear you call me master. You laughed evilly, his face full of pride after taking advantage of her. Keep daydreaming. The demon rolled his eyes and said in an angry tone. When Lung Ruoxue saw this, she widened her eyes in disbelief. What was going on? Did she hear it wrong? Master seemed to be taking advantage of the demon? At this moment, even if she was slow to react, she could tell that the two of them were old acquaintances. However, now was not the time to ask about this. Yu Iran's smile was gentle when he heard the demon's words. However, he turned to Lung Ruoxue and said, Shuer, this guy is too disrespectful to your master. Why don't we change to another one? There were so many good men. Let's have another good fight. Ah. Her master's words made Lung Ruoxue break out in cold sweat. She thought to herself, Master, you're so bold. You dare to say this, but I don't dare to be your disciple. If she dared to have such a thought, the demon would definitely kill her. Of course, he wasn't going to kill her. Therefore, for the safety of all the men in the world, she must be firm in her heart. In this life, in the next life, in all lives, she would not want anyone else except for the evildoer. And Master, other than leaving your last words, shouldn't you also answer your doubts? To this day, she still did not know what the origin of chaos was. There were still many things that her master did not explain clearly, so she was still confused. However, the evildoer's sinister gaze made Lung Ruoxue swallow all her questions. She would ask Huan Chen when she had the chance. Since his master was his previous master, he must know everything about his master. Qing Ju should know as well, even though he had not fully recovered his memory. And now, the air pressure in the room was extremely low. The cold wind was blowing, causing Lung Ruoxue to involuntarily distance herself from the center of the storm. Retreating with her was the equally frightened Huan Chen. Lung Ruoxue did not know how to describe the scene as she looked at the demon and her master who were in a confrontation. Even though her master was just a strand of consciousness, the pressure from her master was still very strong. What was even rarer was that the demon's aura was not any weaker than her masteress. At this moment, she was curious about the demon's identity. However, no one was willing to answer her question now. Just like that, evildoer and Imperial exchanged glances with each other. The crackling of electricity seemed to flash between the two of them. Neither of them was willing to admit defeat first. After a long time, the two of them suddenly looked at each other and smiled. Then they hugged each other. This dramatic scene made Lung Ruoxue dumbfounded once again. What was going on? Lung Ruoxue felt that this was the sentence that she had been saying the most in her heart today. You guys are friends? Lung Ruoxue held it in and finally asked the question in her heart. Chapter 1966, The Identity of a Monster, 1. Who's friends with him? Upon hearing this, the two of them who were originally hugging each other immediately jumped away reflexively. The evildoer even said directly without holding back. Yes, we are not friends, we are enemies. You said with a smile. The relationship between you two is really strange. Their conversation left Lung Ruoxue at a loss for words. Enemy? Did they look like one? He didn't see it anyway. It's not strange at all, we just hate each other. The evildoer said hurriedly. Then he walked to Lung Ruoxue's side and pulled her into his arms. He hugged her tightly as if he was afraid that someone would snatch her away. Lung Ruoxue didn't know whether to laugh or cry at the evildoer's childish behavior. Yes, eyes were wide open. Was this the guy he knew? His disciple was still the most charming. Yu couldn't help but think to himself. At the thought of this, Yu smiled at Lung Ruoxue and said, Shuer, come to Master, Master has a few secrets to tell you. What? Lung Ruoxue looked at Yu in surprise, then at the displeased evildoer. She did not make a move immediately. When Yu saw this, he was greatly disappointed and shouted exaggeratedly, It's really true that a grown woman can't be kept at home. His master's words were not as useful as a look from this brat. I'm sad. Stop acting. Shuer you go. That guy's mouth can't spit out ivory, you can just listen. You don't have to take it to heart. The evildoer retaliated. Then he unwillingly let go of Lung Ruoxue's hand. Lung Ruoxue looked at the evildoer and smiled. Then she walked to Yu and asked, Master, what do you have to tell me? Shuer, I didn't expect you to be taken so soon. I originally wanted to keep the good stuff in the field of others. But now, it seems that we can't keep him here. You looked at Lung Ruoxue and sighed. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, her forehead was filled with black lines. She said, Master, is this the secret you wanted to tell me? Of course not, I just said it out of my own feelings. Shuer, I know that you're under a lot of pressure when I hand the divine realm over to you. However, I can't find anyone else more suitable than you. So, please forgive my selfishness. As for Wu Jing, you don't have to worry too much about her, just do what you need to do. No matter what you do, I will always support you. And that guy, he will definitely help you. With him by your side, Master will be more assured. Although we have been at odds with each other since the day I met him, Master knows that he is the person most worthy of Master's trust. However, you can't tell him this, otherwise he will be proud. You continued. Shuer, Master is very happy to see your cultivation. Master is also very proud to have such an excellent disciple like you. Originally, I wanted to tell you more things, but there are some things that I can't say in front of you. The two of them will tell you everything. You still couldn't say it. As for my other two disciples and those subordinates who were once loyal to me, if you have the chance, you must find a way to contact them. In fact, I know very well that after my death, their days will definitely not be good. Shuer, he'll leave everything to you. I'm a useless master and a lousy divine master. I hope you can do better than Master. Master will bless you forever. Yu Yen continued to speak with his senses, his clear black eyes welling up with tears. However, he resisted the urge to let the water fall. Master, I've already seen eldest senior brother, but there's still no news of second senior brother. Eldest senior brother has already gone to look for him. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she hurriedly said, That's good. That's good. Yulian said. In truth, he felt a lot of guilt towards his own disciples and subordinates. Unfortunately, he couldn't help them at all right now. He could only count on Shui. Although this was a little irresponsible, he had no other choice. Shui, it's about time. Master should leave. You finally said after staring at Shui for a long time. Master. When Lung Ruoxue heard yes words, tears immediately welled up in her beautiful eyes. She had heard these familiar words a few years ago, but now, she was going to experience the life and death separation with her master again. Her heart was in extreme pain. Soon after, Lung Ruoxue watched as Yes figure slowly disappeared from the three of them. After you had completely disappeared, tears began to stream down her face. Shui, don't be sad. He died many years ago, and what you're seeing now is just a wisp of his consciousness left behind. It can't be considered him. The evildoer pulled Lung Ruoxue into his embrace and consoled her with heartache. However, in his heart, he could not help but curse her to death. Damn bastard, making Shui sad again. If that guy hadn't disappeared long ago, he definitely wouldn't have let that annoying man go. I know. Lung Ruoxue stopped her tears and sobbed. Then, she turned to Huan Chen and asked, Huan Chen, you should know what happened back then. When Huan Chen heard Lung Ruoxue's words, he glanced at the evildoer before nodding his head. However, I only know a part of it. As for what the old master has planned, I'm not very sure. Then tell me what you know first. Lung Ruoxue ordered. All right. It all started from hundreds of thousands of years ago. At that time, the divine world was extremely beautiful and the spiritual qi was abundant. It was incomparable to what it was now. Moreover, although the human race and the beast race were not very harmonious at that time, the relationship between the two races was definitely much stronger than it was now. Unfortunately, later on, the old master's younger sister, Wu Yan, became ambitious and wanted to replace the old master. Therefore, she contacted many traitors among the old master's subordinates and set up a plan tens of thousands of years later. Finally, they took advantage of the old master's seclusion to launch a rebellion. In the end, the old master fell at their hands. Huan Chen said with a sorrowful expression, Isn't master a divine master? How could he have died so easily? And where were master's subordinates and two senior brothers at that time? Could it be that they are just going to watch as something happens to master? From Huan Chen's words, Lung Ruoxue could tell that there were many loopholes. Hence, she could not help but ask. The old master was injured at that time and had been in seclusion the entire time. As for his two disciples and subordinates, they were all defeated one by one, so they had no way of rescuing the old master. In that turmoil hundreds of thousands of years ago, many humans and magical beasts betrayed the human race, and almost all of those races had a secret relationship with the old master. After that, the subordinates who were loyal to the old master either died or were sealed. In short, it was a tragic event. Huan Chen said as he recalled. A pained expression gradually appeared on his face. Chapter 1967. The Identity of a Monster, 2. How did Master get injured? Could it be that Master didn't have any premonition before the rebellion? Lung Ruoxue continued to ask. Her master was a god master, and everything in the god world should be within her control. How could such a thing happen? She really could not understand. The old master was injured because Huan Chen glanced at the demon and did not continue. At this moment, the demon continued, That guy was injured because we had a competition just now. At that time, we were all injured and in seclusion. However, when I found out about this, the dust had already settled in the divine world. That woman also calls herself the master of the divine realm. However, with our injuries at the time, dealing with a few rebellions was not a problem at all. And the reason why we would. It was all because of that damned woman. Then, the demon gritted his teeth and said, after hearing the demon's words, Dream Dust fell silent. What's going on? Can't you guys explain it clearly? Lung Ruoxue asked anxiously as she felt that something was amiss. The reason why the mist ripple was successful was because the old master treated her as his own sister. After a long while, Huanchen said, "What was the meaning of this? Could it be that Wu Xian isn't master's biological younger sister?" Lung Ruoxue was confused. "Of course not. That woman is a thief. How could she be Ye's sister?" The demon said hurriedly, "Can you make yourselves clear?" Lung Ruoxue was very anxious. Why did it take so much effort for these two men to talk? Swear, before the creation of the heaven and earth, the world was in chaos. You and I were both born from chaos. However, we were born from different sources of chaos. The source of chaos that gave birth to me contained the element of darkness. Therefore, my body was mainly filled with dark energy. As for you, the source of chaos that gave birth to him was mainly filled with the element of light. He is the master of the divine realm, while I am the master of the 9 nether prison. The world calls me the Dark Lord. He was in charge of the living, while I was in charge of the souls. As such, although our identities seem to be opposing, we were inseparable. However, in the eyes of the world, we were enemies. But in reality, we really can't be considered, and we're not friends. The demon finally opened his mouth to explain. This was also the first time he had revealed his identity to Shui. When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she widened her eyes as he had wished. Her beautiful face was filled with disbelief. The evildoer's identity was too unexpected. Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but sigh. Originally, she had guessed that the evildoer might be master's subordinate. Moreover, she was both a friend and a master. Now that he thought about it, it was a good thing she didn't say her guess. Otherwise, the demon would be furious. What was even more unexpected to her was that the origin of chaos was actually the mother of the evildoers and her master. No wonder they regarded the origin of chaos as so important. Seeing Lung Ruoxue's shock, the demon continued, "Although we never acknowledged each other as our friends, at that time, the person we trusted the most was her. As for that woman, you did love her a lot and treated her as his only family, but unfortunately, that woman was an ingrate. When she was pregnant, she stole that idiot Yes energy. In the end, you died in the hands of that woman. You're really not just stupid." When the evildoer said this, his face was filled with an expression of gritting his teeth. However, Lung Ruoxue clearly didn't understand the demon's words. What did he mean by stealing master's energy? Could energy be stolen? Seeing Lung Ruoxue's confusion, the demon continued to explain, "Shui, although that idiot and I are both born from chaos, we are independent and opposing individuals. Therefore, we can only live in 2 different worlds. When I was just born, I was cold and liked to be alone. I didn't care if there was anyone by my side. That guy couldn't stand loneliness. At that time, a seed from nowhere took root beside you and stole his energy to grow. You should have killed the seed, but he was too soft-hearted and left this disaster behind. That seed is the current Wu Yen, so the 2 of them call each other brother and sister. However, that idiot regarded Wu Yen as her only family member, but Wu Yen only thought that you was her biggest obstacle to her domination of the divine world. After many years of planning, she finally succeeded. Actually, I've warned him many times to be careful of that woman, Wu Yen. Unfortunately, he turned a deaf ear to all of it and died in the hands of that woman in the end." The demon's face was filled with an expression of disappointment. The old master is just too sentimental. When Huanchen heard the evildoer's words, he couldn't help but defend you. Although he sometimes hated that woman for not knowing what was good for her, he never thought that this was his master's fault. Mayas, that woman was a thief. To be so devoted to a thief who had stolen her things was not foolish, but stupid. Otherwise, how could he have died in the hands of that woman? If he had hardened his heart and killed that woman earlier, how could all this have happened? Huanchen's words caused a huge reaction from the demon. He had been holding back for many years because of this, but he had never had the chance to vent. "Shui, but there's one more thing that I have to let you know. In fact, after the rebellion, that idiot had a chance to kill the thief. Although he was injured at the time, it was not a problem for him to deal with that woman. Unfortunately, he couldn't do it, so he died in the hands of that woman. The reason why he didn't dare to tell you these things just now wasn't because he didn't want to, but because he was too embarrassed to say it. However, even though he couldn't bear to kill that woman, he gave this mission to you. The demon said angrily. The old master is just too sentimental. Huan Chen explained in a low voice. He valued relationships, he valued that bitch's relationship, he treated that thief as his own family, but in the end, he caused his own disciple and subordinates to be played in the palm of that woman's hand, their life and death unknown. Is this what you call being sentimental? Huan Chen's words caused the demon to roar at the top of his lungs. When Lung Ruoxue saw how agitated the evildoer was, she didn't know how to console him. She knew very well that the evildoer was infuriated by her master's avoidance. Although she was a little angry with her master after hearing this, she was still her master after all. She really couldn't say anything. After Huan Chen heard this, he fell silent. Although the old master had done something wrong in some areas, after the incident, he had done his best to arrange a way out for his disciples and subordinates. As a result, the old master's old subordinates who had fallen into the hands of the fog ripple were not many, and those people were all quite stubborn, those who wanted to die with the old master. Chapter 1968. The Identity of a Monster. 3. If there were any, they would be sealed beasts. Seeing that the atmosphere had suddenly turned heavy, Lung Ruoxue could only take the initiative to ask, "Freak, then why are you on the Edgewind continent?" Actually, what she wanted to ask was, why did the evildoer appear by her side? Was this also Master's arrangement? I was entrusted by that idiot to protect his future disciple. Although that idiot was a good person, he had given up everything to pry into the secrets of heaven after the incident. He knew that this was a great calamity that was unavoidable. At the same time, he knew that the future of the divine world would depend on his unborn disciple. Therefore, he came to the netherworld realm with a wisp of his consciousness and begged me to protect his disciple. What's more, he only told me that his disciple would be born in the Lung family of the Caltrip continent, but he didn't tell me which generation it would be. Thus, I could only reincarnate again and again, just to find his disciple who had yet to be born. At this point, his devilishly handsome face couldn't help but reveal a bitter expression. In order to find Shui, he had really spent a lot of time and effort. Fortunately, he had finally found her. Reincarnated again and again? Then how many reincarnations have you reincarnated? Lung Ruoxue was speechless. Wasn't this the mistress of the dark world? He was in charge of the world's powerful soul, so why did he need to reincarnate continuously to find someone? I can't remember. When I first met your ancestor, he was just a little kid in open crotch pants. After that, I gave the universal bracelet to him and had him pass it on from generation to generation. However, after so many years, there was still no one in the Lung family who had the chaotic body and could make the universal bracelet recognize him as its master. Thus, I could only continue to reincarnate and look for him. The demon smiled faintly. You've worked hard. After hearing the demon's words, Lung Ruoxue's forehead was covered with cold sweat. She didn't expect the demon to have seen the Lung family's ancestor in open crotch pants. No wonder he always smiled so strangely when he saw the ancestor. It's not hard at all. It's worth it to be able to find the woman I love. The demon said with a proud smile. But there's something I don't understand. You're not the mistress of the dark world. So why do you have to reincarnate again and again to find someone? His devilish and sensitive words made Lung Ruoxue feel a little embarrassed. Her beautiful face flushed red, so she had no choice but to change the topic. I can't go to the lower realms as I please. The laws of heaven and earth are afraid that the lower realms won't be able to withstand my dark power and will be destroyed, so they restrict my freedom. I can only use the method of reincarnation. The demon said. Then, his expression suddenly changed and he started complaining, Shui, the heavens are really unfair. Why does that idiot have the right to go wherever he wants? And I can only stay in the 9 nether prison? If he wanted to go to other places to play, not only were there many restrictions, but he couldn't enjoy himself to his heart's content? that damn law of heaven and earth is even staring at me as if it's afraid that it'll destroy the whole world. In fact, I'm not that violent. Tell me, isn't the heavens being unfair to me? The demon's clear black eyes were like a puppy's as he stared at Lung Ruoxue with anticipation. Yes, the heavens are so unfair to you. How can you be so right? You're too much. When Lung Ruoxue saw his demonic and adorable expression, she immediately felt indignant. It is. In order to find you, I've suffered a lot. So, you have to compensate me. You're only allowed to love me in the future. The demon took the opportunity to raise his conditions, and a hint of slyness quickly flashed in the depths of his eyes. You're the only one I've ever loved. Lung Ruoxue said helplessly. Then, she asked curiously, since you're the mistress of the dark world, why would a marquis of the Ling Wind continent be bullied by the Yi family? I didn't have my original memory when I was born. Later, Mu Li found me and I recovered my memory. From then on, I was the one who bullied them. The demon said honestly. So that's how it is. You've really suffered. The evildoer's words made Lung Ruoxue's heart ache. Even though the evildoer did not tell her in detail about the circumstances of each reincarnation, she was very clear that those were definitely not good memories. All of this was for her. So, you have to compensate me well. Schwer, did you know? When I first saw you on the prismatic wind continent, I couldn't take my eyes off you. At that time, I had already recovered all my memories, so I was in disbelief. Although I don't really like women, I've seen many beautiful women, but none of them could move my heart. But the first time I saw you, I knew I wanted you. Later on, I found out that you were the owner of the universal bracelet and the person I was looking for. My thoughts became even stronger. I even thought that this might be the main reason why that idiot asked me to protect you. Now that I think about it, it seems very possible. The demon guessed. After all, that guy had peeked into the heavenly secret. However, now that he knew that everything might be within that idiot's calculations, he could only willingly jump into the well. First time seeing me? Was it when we were in the psychedelic forest? When Lung Ruoxue heard the evildoer's words, she suddenly wanted to know when the evildoer had fallen for her. Perhaps, this was something every woman wanted to know. No, even earlier than that. The demon suddenly said in a mysterious tone. How come I didn't know about it? Lung Ruoxue's face was filled with question marks. She remembered very clearly that the psychedelic forest was the first time she had met the demon. At that time, we didn't really meet, and I only caught a glimpse of you. The evildoer said with a smile. His thoughts couldn't help but go back to that moment. At that time, Schwer was like a curious baby. She was very curious about everything in the Big Dipper Wind continent, and his eyes couldn't help but follow her. Then, when exactly is it? Lung Ruoxue was very stubborn and wanted to ask for the exact time. Do you still remember the first time you left the general's mansion, went for a walk on the street, and bought a baby back? At that time, I was in a private room of a restaurant and happened to see you. The demon laughed, his eyes filled with deep affection. Hearing the demon's words, Lung Ruoxue finally remembered. No wonder she felt that someone was watching her in the dark. Now, it seemed like it was the demon. Freak. Although you were initially entrusted by Master to look for me with such difficulty, I still have to thank you. Thank you for everything you've done for me. After thinking about it, Lung Ruoxue started to get emotional. Silly girl, even though I'm being entrusted by someone, if the person I'm looking for isn't you, I won't be by that person's side all day long. At most, when he's in danger, I'll help him and ensure that he grows up safely. So, everything I'm doing now is of my own free will. It has nothing to do with other people's trust. I hope you can understand. The demon said very seriously. He didn't want Schwer to think that he was only good to her because of her stupid master. I understand. Lung Ruoxue laughed as she took the initiative to hug the demon. Now that she knew the identity of the demon and knew about her master, she felt that she had to work harder in her cultivation and strive to avenge her master as soon as possible. Although her master could let go of her sister, who she regarded as family, she would not allow anyone to live well after betraying her master. Therefore, she would never let that woman go. In fact, she was very clear that if that woman knew her identity and that she had the cosmic bangle and the origin of chaos, she would never let her go. Therefore, the most important thing for her now was to improve her strength and cultivate her own force. After all, that woman was now a divine master and had been in the divine world for many years. Her power was unfathomable. So, Lung Ruoxue knew that if she wanted to deal with that woman, she still had a lot to work on. She had already met her two senior brothers, Bing Yao. As long as the other one was still alive, she would definitely find him. As for her master's former subordinates, she could only decide based on the situation. After all, she did not know much about those people's situation. However, as long as they did not betray her master, she would definitely not treat them badly. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxue once again turned her gaze to Huan Chen. As an artifact spirit that had always followed by her master's side, Huan Chen's understanding of her master's subordinates was definitely much better than hers and the demoness. Hence, he was the most suitable person to ask. Dreamed us? Tell me about master's subordinates. I want to know more about their situation. Lung Ruoxue asked with a smile. All right. Seeing that his little master had finally thought of him, Huan Chen was very pleased. When he saw her being so sweet with the devilish man, he thought that he would be forgotten. In fact, he was a little dissatisfied that the two of them had changed the topic as they talked. However, he was relieved to see that his little master was not charmed by the beauty. Then, Huan Chen seemed to have returned to the peaceful and beautiful divine realm hundreds of thousands of years ago. He slowly recalled, when the old master was the master of the divine master, he had many followers. Whether it was the human race or the beast race, there were many experts who were loyal to him. At that time, the beast god was the leader of the beast race, and most of the beast races, including the 4 king divine beast races, were loyal to the old master. Chapter 1969, You'll Get Used to It, 1. However, not all of the beasts are loyal. Some of them have been bribed by the mist to become her lackeys. It's precisely because they're disloyal that many beasts are caught off guard and fall for their tricks. Those magical beasts who were loyal to the old master have either died or been sealed. The current magical beasts are not as powerful as before. However, the strange thing is that many of the rebellious beasts are not completely under the control of the fog. Sometimes, the fog can't even command them. I don't know what's going on. As he spoke, Huan Chen also felt strange. Isn't that obvious? The betraying beasts were ambitious. They would betray their own race for power and status, and Fog Ripple's power was obtained through improper means. They would naturally not be convinced by Fog Ripple, so they should only be in a cooperative relationship, and not a subordinate. Lung Ruoxue said after hearing Huan Chen's words. Shui Er's guess is right. No one is willing to be under someone else's control. The rime ice can't suppress them at all. After all, they all know that the rime ice can't really control the divine world. Naturally, there's no need for them to listen to that woman's words. However, on the surface, they seem to have a close relationship. However, as far as I know, there seem to be some disharmonious voices among the beast clans, especially the 4 great king divine beast clans that used to be quite close. You should have seen it at the last elite gathering. They don't even care about each other, so their relationship has obviously deteriorated. The demon laughed. Well, I just don't know how far their relationship has gone. Lung Ruoxue was curious as well. Previously, she had wanted to get closer to the Qilin clan. However, there wasn't a suitable opportunity to do so, so she just let it be. Now, it seemed that if there was really a conflict between these beasts, she could make good use of it. There's no rush in the matter of the beast race. It's not easy for Fog to make them truly useful to us. The most important thing now is to find out the whereabouts of those stupid subordinates and what they are thinking now. The demon said after thinking for a while. Some of the old master's subordinates are still in the hands of the fog. I'm not very clear about the whereabouts of the others. However, there are definitely people from the fog in the 8 great divine regions. Therefore, shouldn't we eliminate the claws and fangs of the fog first? Huan Chen suggested. There's no hurry to kill those dogs. "I'm quite curious that you don't know the whereabouts of that stupid subordinate?" Hearing Huan Chen's words, the evildoer asked in surprise. He thought that the idiot would explain his funeral. He didn't expect that Huan Chen, the artifact spirit who had always followed that idiot, also had many things he didn't know. "I don't know," Huan Chen said with certainty. He only knew that a portion of the people were in the hands of the mist. As for the whereabouts of those who had escaped, the old master had not told him. It was probably to protect those people. In reality, Yu had indeed made arrangements for the whereabouts of most of his subordinates. However, it wasn't the time for them to meet Shui. He shouldn't have appeared at this time, but he didn't expect Huan Chen to meet Shui and recognize her as his master so early. Hence, his arrangements were disrupted. Originally, he had already sealed everything that happened in the past in the heaven-defying incantation. As long as Shui cultivated to the 9th level of the heaven-defying incantation, she would know everything. According to his plan, the elite competition would be about to begin by then. Huan Chen would naturally meet Shui and recognize her as his master. By then, Shui's strength should have been almost at Reverend God level. After knowing everything, Shui would be able to do more with less effort. He had also planned to show up at that time, but he did not expect the elite competition to be brought forward. Huan Chen and Shui had met earlier, and he had also appeared in front of Shui earlier. At this moment, Shui did not know everything. He could not say it in front of her, so he kept his mouth shut. He knew that even if he did not say anything, Huan Chen and the demon would tell her something. More importantly, Shui would know more details when she reached the 9th level of the heaven-defying art. However, he would probably not have the chance to appear again at that time. As for whether his former subordinates would be as loyal to him as they were to him, it would depend on Shui's ability. After all, he had promised his subordinates that he would not force them to do anything. Naturally, he would not force them to acknowledge Shui as their master. However, he had no intention of telling Lung Ruoxue about these things. This could be considered a test for his own disciple. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue naturally didn't know that when her master gave her the opportunity to contact his former subordinates, he had left her with a difficult problem. However, even if she knew, she wouldn't have much of a reaction. After all, if she was in her master's position, she would probably consider the same thing. One must know that if she didn't have any ability, even if her master had made arrangements for her, she would not be able to avenge her master. More importantly, she wasn't someone who only knew how to get what she wanted. Therefore, no matter what she did, she liked to achieve her goals with her own efforts. Avenging his master was no exception. What about the Dark Knight race? Lung Ruoxue thought for a moment before suddenly asking. They can't be considered old master's subordinates. In the past, the Dark Knight race was famous for their arrogance in the divine world. They didn't want to recognize anyone as their master, even if the other party was the divine master. However, their race had a close relationship with their old master and had received his grace before. Thus, they respected him very much, but they didn't truly recognize him as their master. Fog Ripple had also thought of targeting them. After all, the battle strength of the Dark Knight race was obvious to all in the immortal realm. But how could the Dark Knight race take a fancy to Wu Cheng? Those guys have very high standards. Huan Chen said with a hint of gloating. So, most of the Knight race has been sealed? Even though she had never asked in Yu, she could guess that the seal on the Knight race had something to do with fog. Well, it's not strange that they were sealed. Fog Ice has taken extreme measures against people or beasts who are not used by it. This is also her usual method. Huan Chen said. Lung Ruoxue nodded slightly and didn't continue on this topic. After all, it was a little too early to talk about this. Huan Chen wasn't too sure about the whereabouts of her master's subordinates. Furthermore, she couldn't do everything in one go. If she wanted to avenge her master, she had to consider her own strength. The most important thing now was to work hard to improve her strength and cultivate her own forces. Of course, allies were also very important. Chapter 1970. You'll get used to it, too. At the thought of this, Lung Ruoxue added, Huan Chen, let's discuss this later. They'll go out and break through first. With that, Lung Ruoxue pulled the evildoer along and left the dream dust space. The two of them went straight into the bracelet. At that moment, Green Vessel, who was standing in front of the light screen with a long face and did not know what to do, immediately appeared in front of Lung Ruoxue when he felt the strangeness of the bracelet. He threw himself into Lung Ruoxue's arms with great enthusiasm and called out excitedly, "Sister, you've finally come out of seclusion." Qingju was so happy. Now that his sister was out, he could finally put his heart at ease. Qingju, do you miss Big Sister? Qingju's unusual enthusiasm surprised Lung Ruoxue. She had also been in closed-door cultivation in the past, but she had never seen Qingju like this. I really want to. Qingju nodded his head vigorously. Big Sister also misses Qingju, but, Qingju, Big Sister has something important to do now. I'll come and chat with you later. Lung Ruoxue laughed as she coaxed. Sister, I also have something important to tell you. Qingju also said. Although he did not want his sister to be troubled by such a terrible thing the moment she came out of seclusion, it was impossible for her not to know about it. Then Green Vessel will go first. Lung Ruoxue chuckled. Sister, there are people attacking us from outside. Qingju said bluntly. After he finished speaking, he even lowered his head, not daring to look at Lung Ruoxue. He felt that he was really too useless. He couldn't even settle such a small matter. Who is it? Lung Ruoxue's expression turned cold as she asked. Heaven-breaking. Qingju said softly. Who's Padian? Lung Ruoxue didn't recognize this person at all, let alone have heard of him. Hundreds of thousands of years ago, he was a famous devil in the divinity. Moreover, everyone thought that he was dead. Who knew that he was still alive and even brought people to attack us? Qingju said gloomily. We don't have any conflicts with him, do we? Why is he attacking us? Lung Ruoxue asked in confusion. She tried her best to recall all the memories she had about Heaven Splitter. However, no matter how much she thought about it, she was certain that she did not know this person at all. He's here to save people. However, I don't know who he's trying to save because we've been staying in the house all this time, and no one has paid him any attention. Qingju explained. As long as you don't go out, you won't be in danger. Lung Ruoxue nodded. She was still very confident in the defensive formation she had set up. It was supposed to be like this, but he found a person who was proficient in formations from somewhere. Now, that guy has already solved nearly half of the Great Skyguarding formation. If Big Sister doesn't come out of seclusion soon, this house will probably be broken into by them. Qingju could not help but remind him. The divine realm is really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. I didn't think that there would be someone who could solve the Great Skyguarding formation. I must meet this person. Lung Ruoxue was very interested when she heard Qingju's words. Sister, that person is definitely a genius in formations. If he wasn't our enemy, it would be a good choice to take him in for our use. Those who walk different paths cannot conspire together. Qingju's face was filled with regret. At the end of his speech, he even sighed like a little old man. Lung Ruoxue was amused when she heard this and could not help but pull him into her arms. However, she did not dare to kiss him. Otherwise, the demon would definitely fly into a rage. Qingju, don't worry about him for now. It's not that easy for him to break my skyguarding formation, so let him play by himself for a while. I'll go play with him after Sister is done with her work. Lung Ruoxue said after some thought. What's the important thing? Qingju's face was full of question marks. He could not understand. Could there be something more important than guarding the array that his sister had to do? I still have to find a new to advance. Lung Ruoxue counted with her fingers. Big Sister's advancement this time is so peaceful. When he heard his sister mention advancement, Qingju immediately wilted. This was because his sister did not go into closed-door cultivation with him this time. This made him very disappointed. That damn dream dust. He was the one who snatched her sister away. Although he had not officially met Huan Chen, he secretly hated Huan Chen. Even if they were old friends, he wouldn't let them go if they dared to snatch his sister away from him. At the thought of this, Qingju subconsciously glanced at Leng Ruoxue. Then, his eyes widened in disbelief. Thus, why was the origin of chaos in his sister's body? Could it be that the origin of chaos had already recognized a master? However, his sister's current strength should not be enough to make the origin of chaos recognize her as its master, right? What was going on? The prime essences of chaos have acknowledged you as their master? Qingju could not help but ask. Yes. Leng Ruoxue nodded. She was not surprised that Qingju could recognize the origin of chaos. After all, Qingju belonged to her master. Big sister must have suffered a lot. Hearing Leng Ruoxue's affirmative answer, Qingju knew that his sister must have suffered a lot. After all, the origin of chaos was different from ordinary divine weapons. It was the origin of heaven and earth that had a higher status than him. How could it simply acknowledge a master? It's all right. Although this fellow tormented me quite a bit, he also gave me some benefits. Upon hearing her words, the origin of chaos that the Yin family had placed in her dantian seemed to be very dissatisfied. Leng Ruoxue was speechless. It seemed like this fellow had a certain level of intelligence. However, this was normal. After all, he was the origin of chaos. If he could nurture a monster and a master, he was naturally not an ordinary person. Sister, isn't the origin of chaos angry at your words? Qingju asked curiously with an evil smile. In fact, the origin of chaos that he knew was very stingy. I'm a little angry, but it belongs to me now, so it naturally has to listen to me. If it dares to show its master any disrespect, I'll spank its butt. Leng Ruoxue purposely said in a vicious tone. Sister, I'm looking forward to you smacking its butt. Qingju said with a face full of anticipation. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. It was rare for the demon to agree. But you'll have the chance to see it. Leng Ruoxue promised, but she couldn't help but think in her heart. Even if she wanted to hit the origin of chaos, but she had to first find out where it was. You guys continue chatting, I'll go and unseal the bracelet. Leng Ruoxue continued. With that, Leng Ruoxue disappeared. When they saw her running away faster than a rabbit, both Green Vessel and the demon could not help but laugh out loud. Schwer already knows. The demon suddenly said to Qingju without thinking. What do you know? Qingju pretended to be calm as he asked. After Huanchen appeared, he had guessed that he would tell his sister some things. However, he did not know how much Huanchen would tell her. I almost know everything. The demon said simply. Hearing the demon's perfunctory reply, Qingju was a little angry. Can't you be more specific? Damn it, she knew that he was in a hurry, but she still acted like this. It was really too infuriating. Chapter 1971, You'll Get Used to It, 3. She already knows the details. However, we're not too sure about the current situation of that stupid subordinate. The demon said indifferently. It was clear that he wanted to anger people to death. Damn it, don't call my old master an idiot. You're the idiot, your whole family is an idiot. Qingju was already very angry, and after hearing the demon call his old master an idiot, he became even angrier. So, without thinking, he cursed directly and even jumped 3 times high. He waved his small fists angrily, and that angry little look looked extremely cute. When the demon heard Qingju scolding him, he picked him up and looked him in the eye. That guy is an idiot. Even if you're protecting him, he's an idiot. You're a bully. Seeing that he couldn't win the argument or defeat the demon, Qingju cried out in desperation. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue, who had already unlocked the seal on the bracelet, heard Qingju's cries and quickly walked over. She hugged Qingju in her arms and coaxed him. Qingju, why are you crying? Who bullied you? This bad guy is bullying me. Qingju pointed at the demon as he complained. His little body was still twitching, and his cute pink face was red with anger. His bright teary eyes were also filled with anger. Qingju's words gave Leng Ruoxue a headache. In her opinion, even though the demon's possessiveness was very strong, he would not go so far as to bully a little kid like Qingju, right? After some thought, she looked at the evildoer helplessly. I didn't bully him. I only said that your master is an idiot. He started crying. You even said that my whole family is stupid. Swear, does my family include you? Receiving Lung Ruox's gaze, the evildoer pretended to be confused, but in his heart, he could not help but laugh. Hearing the evildoer's half-teasing, Lung Ruoxue was speechless. She rolled her eyes at the evildoer and changed the topic. Green vessel, look, the space has been upgraded again. Your favorite land has been expanded several times. Now, you can plant a lot of good things again. Be happy. N. Qingju responded softly, but he was not as excited as before. Qingju, you haven't told me what powers you've gotten after you broke the seal. Lung Ruoxue sighed and reminded him. This time, she had advanced to the 8th level of the heaven-defying art and was only one step away from the 9th level. However, she didn't know how long it would take for her to reach this level. After all, the amount of spiritual qi she needed was beyond the description of numbers. She had already reached the monarch god level. However, she still had to go out and advance to the monarch god level. Otherwise, he would not be able to enjoy the benefits bestowed by the laws of the world. However, he had to coax this little thing first. Shuttle. Qingju choked and replied softly. Shuttle? What do you mean by that? Lung Ruoxue did not understand. I can bring you anywhere as long as you want to go. Qingju explained simply. Swear, usually only a reverent god can tear open space and travel to any plane. However, a reverent god is also limited in going to other planes. It's impossible for them to leave the divine world an infinite number of times. However, with this little thing's ability, you can go anywhere you want. The demon also explained. Really? I didn't expect Green Vessel to be so capable. Lung Ruoxue hugged Qingju tightly and said happily. Qingju was also affected by Lung Ruox's words, and his mood became better. Of course, sister, I'm very powerful. Qingju said arrogantly. After he finished speaking, he even looked at the demon provocatively. However, the demon did not bother to lower himself to his level. Seeing Qingju in such a state, Lung Ruoxue knew that the little fellow was fine. He immediately said, Qingju, quickly go and take a look at your own land. Big sister is going to advance. With that, Lung Ruoxue quickly pulled the evildoer away from the bracelet. Seeing that his sister had left, Qingju sighed helplessly and disappeared as well. When the two of them exited the bangle, they happened to enter their room. Without a second thought, Lung Ruoxue and the demon were in their room, ready to advance. Before advancing, Lung Ruoxue moved her spiritual beasts out of her bangle. After seeing Lung Ruoxue, the beasts naturally went to get closer to their master first. Then, the cute little beasts each found a place to lie down. Lung Ruoxue and the demon sat down cross-legged as well and started their cultivation. The two of them were like water flowing when a channel was formed, and there was not much difficulty in advancing. Not long after they sat down, the regulations of the world descended. At this moment, Uncle Long and the others who were sitting in the garden felt the advancement of the laws of heaven and earth. They were shocked, but they were soon overjoyed. The place where the laws of heaven and earth landed was Lung Ruox's room. When they saw this, their hearts that had been hanging in the air for a long time finally settled down. Swear had finally advanced. The first elder heaved a sigh of relief. Even though Lung Ruoxue had not been in closed-door cultivation for a long time, he felt as if a day had passed by like a year. This feeling was extremely bad. However, when Uncle Long and the others saw the descending laws of heaven and earth, they couldn't help but smile. They were happy, but Padian and the others, who had been waiting outside the house, almost had black faces. Just how many people were advancing? Originally, when they saw the first law of the world descend, they were already very depressed. One had to know that they were standing guard for the other party like dogs. However, who would have thought that the other party would cultivate and break through as if nothing had happened? Nothing had been delayed. However, when the laws of heaven and earth descended one after another, they couldn't stay calm anymore. He couldn't stay calm. First, they didn't understand the situation inside the house, and second, This advancement had given them too much stimulation. These people had lived for quite a long time, and they knew the difficulty of advancing. However, who would have thought that they would be able to witness such a grand occasion in this small broken place? The advancement of this major rule dazzled their eyes and also greatly stimulated them. If it were not for the defensive array blocking the outside, they would have probably rushed in and started a massacre. Tu Liang, how much longer will it take to break this defensive formation? Someone couldn't help but ask. The fastest will be half a year. Tu Liang answered while solving the formation. What? It'll take that long? The man shouted with wide eyes. And that's if there are no accidents, under the fastest circumstances. Tu Liang said honestly. His mind was tied down by this exquisite formation, so he didn't really care when it could be untied. However, even if he didn't care, it didn't mean that others were willing to continue wasting their time here. After hearing his answer, the man directly walked to Patin and said, "Big brother, this formation can't be broken in a short time. Are we going to keep guarding here? What else? Or do you have any good ideas for us to attack this house?" Patin, who was sitting in the corner, lifted his eyelids and said indifferently, "I don't have a choice, but I don't think it's much use for us to guard outside like fools. The people inside aren't delayed at all, they're changing shifts and advancing. If we continue to guard this place, and the formation can't be broken in a short time, won't we become turtles in a jar by the time they advance to the divine emperor or reverend god level? Big brother, I understand your feelings of wanting to repay a debt of gratitude, but you should also think about us brothers." The man said, unafraid of death. He had been here for more than half a year and had not come close to anything. He had long wanted to leave this place. "You mean you want to leave?" Padian asked in a soft voice and glanced at the person who spoke. "I'm just thinking for my brothers." The man felt Potion's gaze and his heart trembled. He was quite clear about Potion's ruthlessness, so it would be a lie if he wasn't afraid. "What about you guys? You think so too?" After listening to the man's words, Padian asked the others, but no one dared to say a word, even though many people had thoughts of leaving. "Well, listen to Big Brother." At this time, someone flattered. "Oh, since you're going to listen to me, I'll give you two choices. One is to stay here with me, and the other is to leave if you want to." However, even if there were people who wanted to leave, they didn't dare to say anything because everyone present knew that the calmer Pation was, the more dangerous it would be. If they really dared to leave, they were afraid that they wouldn't even have to leave the land of demons before Pation would kill them first. In this case, who would dare to mention leaving? Suddenly, the outside of the house became unusually quiet. The first elder and the others who saw this through the flower garden's light screen were filled with regret. What a pity! Just a little more and they would have turned on each other. However, now that Shuo was about to come out of seclusion, the first elder and the others had more confidence. After a long time, the laws of heaven and earth continued to descend. Why are there so many laws of the world descending? How many ranks did that girl advance to? Shenhua, who had been observing Lung Ruox's room, could no longer remain calm when she saw the law of heaven and earth descending endlessly. Even if he was experienced and knowledgeable, he had never seen anyone advance in this way, right? Was he still human? I don't know. However, I won't be surprised if anything strange happens to that girl. You'll get used to it. Lu Feng, who was sitting beside him, patted Shenhua's shoulder sympathetically. Alright, looks like you'll have to slowly get used to it. Shenhua helplessly wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead. Seeing that the others were all very calm, he felt a little ashamed. Chapter 1972, Class Discrimination, 1. Gradually, Shenhua's initial surprise turned into shock, then to calmness and finally, to numbness. Shenhua couldn't help but think to himself that anyone who saw the dense law of heaven and earth that was emitting white light and dazzling like the most beautiful gem would probably become numb at the end. And those who had the same thoughts as him naturally included Pation and the others. However, other than the numbness of Pation and the others, there was also a trace of anger and jealousy. They were envious. No matter what the situation was inside, Such a large-scale breakthrough made them extremely envious. One had to know that the higher the cultivation level, the more difficult it was. Thus, when they saw the densely packed regulations of the heaven and earth, they all felt extremely uncomfortable. That sour, bitter, and numbing feeling lingered in their hearts for a long time, until the laws of the world completely disappeared. After an unknown amount of time, the laws of heaven and earth finally stopped descending, but Padian and the others' faces became uglier and uglier. This advancement actually lasted for several hours, right? Was he still human? This was clearly trying to anger him to death. However, just as Puotian and the others were cursing the heavens, several beautiful and dazzling laws of heaven and earth descended from the sky. At this moment, the sky was already dark. Therefore, the laws of heaven and earth that were emitting white light were particularly eye-catching. They even illuminated the gray-black night sky as if it was daytime. Seeing this situation, Padian and the others simply wanted to vomit blood. What was going on? Padian and the others all had dark faces, and the expressions on their faces were somewhat distorted, revealing the resentment in their hearts at this time. In fact, they were not the only ones who were puzzled. Uncle Long and the others were also puzzled. However, they immediately understood. That was because the laws of heaven and earth seemed to be falling from the same direction, but their final destination was different. Seeing this, they knew that Feng De and the others had also advanced. This was a great thing. This result made Uncle Long and the others even happier. After a long time, the laws of the heaven and earth finally left unwillingly. Lung Ruoxue and the demon were the first to walk out of the room. When they arrived at the garden, the two of them had just greeted Uncle Long and the others when they saw the people in the garden looking at them as if they were monsters. After a long while, "Little girl Xue, you've actually advanced 2 ranks in a row and become a god king?" The first elder's eyes widened in disbelief as he asked in shock. He knew that Xue was a pervert, but he didn't expect her to be this perverted. She had only been in the immortal realm for a few years. He had actually advanced to become a god king. This cultivation speed truly made him feel ashamed. One had to know that he was only a divine emperor now, and Xue was only 1 level lower than him. However, Xue's battle prowess was definitely above his, and her heart-palpitating natal flame was also a lethal weapon that no one could resist. At the thought of this, First Elder's cold sweat began to drip down uncontrollably. It was truly terrifying. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. And that bratchin, he's also a freak. Could he have become a reverent god after coming out of seclusion? If that was the case, he felt that he could bang his head against a wall. After thinking for a while, the great elder silently glanced at the demon and heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this kid's strength was currently at the divine emperor realm and had not advanced to the reverent god realm in the future. Otherwise, he, who had cultivated for countless years, would really be so depressed that he would vomit blood. However, that brat had cultivated to the level of a divine emperor in less than 100 years. This fact was still enough to make people go crazy. In fact, this was because the demon had deliberately controlled his cultivation level. Otherwise, with the foundation he had in his previous life, he could have become a reverent god in the blink of an eye. However, he wanted to grow with Xue, so he had placed his strength at the level of a divine emperor, only 1 level higher than Xue. This would prevent men from looking down on him. As a divine emperor who was at least at the reverent god level, or even more powerful than a reverent god, he could even pretend to be a pig to protect Xue. Why not? The reason why Xue was able to advance 2 ranks and become a god king in everyone's eyes was all thanks to the help of the origin of chaos. Originally, Xue's speed of absorbing spiritual qi was already very fast. However, the origin of chaos had forcibly increased Xue's speed of absorbing spiritual qi by at least 2 times. As a result, it was expected that she, who had just advanced to the 8th level of the heaven-defying art, would advance 2 levels in a row. After all, as long as she had enough spiritual qi, it would be easy for her to reach the divine sovereign level. However, if she wanted to reach the reverent god level, she would have to wait until she had completed the 9th level of the heaven-defying art. Otherwise, her cultivation would be limited by the art. After all, Shui-Er's main cultivation was the heaven-defying art, and it was quite powerful. Naturally, she would not allow Shui-Er's assistance to surpass her own cultivation. However, the 9th level of the heaven-defying art was different from the first 8 levels. If Shui-Er wanted to complete the cultivation of the heaven-defying art, she had to complete the cultivation of the first 8 levels, including alchemy, weapon refining, beast taming, array techniques, sword techniques, and so on. Otherwise, even if she absorbed enough spiritual qi to complete the cultivation of the heaven-defying art, the heaven-defying art would not help her. At the thought of this, evildoer could already imagine how depressed Shui-Er must be. However, he also knew that Shui-Er was a person who became braver the more she was defeated. She would never stop because of a small difficulty. On the contrary, the more difficult the matter was, the more it would arouse Shui-Er's fighting spirit. This was also one of Shui-Er's special qualities that he liked to see the most. This time, Shui-Er's spirit beasts had also gained a lot from her advancement. The treasures that had first acknowledged their masters and most of the other magical beasts had all advanced to become Class 9 sacred beasts. The originally weaker silver wolves had all advanced to Class 8 sacred beasts. Their overall strength could be said to have increased by a large amount. Among them, the old phoenix and the other beasts were the happiest. They had finally recovered their strength as 9th level sacred beasts in such a short time. If it had been in the past, this would have been completely unimaginable. The Silver Rat King, who had just acknowledged a new master, also had a qualitative leap in strength. It had advanced to become a Class 8 sacred beast. As for its subordinates, they had all advanced as well. The weakest among them was a Class 1 sacred beast, and they had advanced the most among the beasts that had advanced this time. This fact had almost made the Silver Rat King faint from excitement. However, Bai Su, who had advanced to the 9th level of the sacred beast realm the last time, felt a bit depressed. This was because, apart from feeling the spiritual energy in his body become denser, there was no sign of a breakthrough at all. However, all the other beasts scoffed at his depression. All the beasts knew very well that although the strength of a divine emperor-ranked beast and a hierarch-ranked beast seemed to be only one rank apart, the difference in status between the two was like heaven and earth. The chasm between these two ranks was not so easy to cross. Otherwise, wouldn't the number of hierarch-level beasts in the divine realm be overwhelming? Chapter 1973, Class Discrimination, 2. Leng Ruoxue had learned from her own understanding that after crossing the threshold of a 9th-grade sacred divine beast, all beasts would be collectively called Supreme Emperor-level beasts. They were also known as godly supreme-level beasts. However, it wasn't easy to become a venerated emperor beast. Otherwise, Ziyu, who had already advanced to 9th-level sacred divine beast, wouldn't still be a 9th-level sacred divine beast after several rank-ups. From this, one could see how difficult it was to advance to the godly venerable rank. However, the increase in the overall strength of the beasts was enough to make Leng Ruoxue extremely excited. On top of that, she now had the strength of a god king. Hence, Leng Ruoxue was very satisfied with her advancement this time. Hearing the first elder's words, Leng Ruoxue smiled and nodded. My luck during this closed-door cultivation is pretty good. I didn't expect to actually advance 2 levels in a row. It's not just good luck. The speed of your advancement is simply heaven-defying. I've been cultivating for so long, but am still stuck at the Divine Emperor level, unable to advance to Reverend God level for a long time. You've become a God King in such a short time. The great elder's face was full of envy, jealousy, and hatred. As he spoke, he even lowered his head in shame. He really didn't have the face to see anyone. Have you known Shui-Er for 10 years? The great elder did some calculations, and it didn't seem like there was one. Moreover, even if it had been 10 years, those 10 years would have been nothing more than the blink of an eye for cultivators like them. However, this freak had become a divine king. The great elder was still struggling with this matter. However, at this moment, Leng Ruoxue wasn't clear about first elder's thoughts. Otherwise, she would have consoled him and said that she had cultivated for more than 10 years because she had been cultivating in the bangle. The time acceleration in the bangle was a weapon that she used to cheat in her cultivation. In this way, her cultivation speed was only slightly faster than that of ordinary cultivators. Of course, Lung Ruoxue didn't have the chance to tell First Elder and the others about these thoughts. Just as Lung Ruoxue was about to be humble, Feng De and the rest walked out of the room in a grandiose manner. When they saw that most of them had advanced to the monarch god realm, the First Elder and the others were already numb. However, when the Grand Elder and the rest saw that there were a few god kings among the divine lords, they could not remain calm. Is this still considered a human? It was one thing for Shuer to have become a god king, as she had always been abnormal. He could accept whatever commotion she caused. However, now the little girl's grandfather and brother had actually become god kings as well. Could this be the so-called abnormal family? In reality, Lung Qingtian and Lung Ruhan were not the only ones who had advanced to the God King realm. However, they stood out among the God Kings and were Lung Ruoxue's close relatives. This was why the First Elder and the others were so surprised. When Lung Ruoxue saw her grandfather and brother's cultivation, she was also extremely excited. In the past few years, her grandfather and brother had been working hard on their cultivation and rarely participated in any activities. Now that she could finally see their results, Lung Ruoxue was truly happy for them. This was because Lung Ruoxue was very clear that her grandfather and brother were working so hard for her. They wanted to be her support and not drag her down. When she thought of this, Lung Ruoxue's eyes started to tear up. What could make her happier than the support of her family? Not only that, when Lung Ruoxue saw another figure among the familiar faces who had advanced to the God King realm, she was also overjoyed. Big Brother Feng, congratulations on becoming a God King as well. Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes gazed at Feng Moran as she sincerely wished him well. Ever since they had left the water margin continent, Big Brother Feng had rarely appeared in front of her. Furthermore, he had spent almost all his time on cultivation. Sometimes, it was difficult for her to even see Big Brother Feng. However, when she saw Big Brother Feng's current cultivation level, she knew that his hard work had finally paid off. It's all thanks to Shuer. Hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Feng Moran smiled gently. The reason why he worked so hard in his cultivation was all for Shuer. He wanted to stand by Shuer's side and not be someone she would protect. On top of that, the cultivation of the people or beasts that followed Shuer grew higher and higher. This made him feel inferior and that he was a burden. However, this thought did not make him give up on himself. Instead, it became the motivation for him to work hard in his cultivation. With Shuer's help in improving his physique, he didn't feel that he was inferior to others. The only thing he was inferior to others in was probably time. Hence, other than showing his face and seeing Shuer once in a while, he spent all his time on cultivation. With the time acceleration in the spatial space, his strength was also improving rapidly without him knowing. Every time he advanced a level, he would feel that he was one step closer to Shuer. He was even more confident now. After all, Shuer was a demonic genius. Hence, if he wanted to catch up to Shuer, he would need more time. It was precisely because he was clear of this fact that he had asked Qingju to arrange for a life-or-death seclusion for him. Unless there was something important, he was not to wake him up. After coming out of seclusion this time, he had successfully advanced to the God King realm. Although the strength of a God King was nothing compared to the many experts in the divine realm, he would at least not be a burden to Shuer. When he saw Shuer's joy at his strength, he felt that his efforts had not been in vain. From now on, who stood by Shuer's side, could finally stop feeling inferior. However, if he wanted to become Shuer's true right-hand man, he had to continue to work hard. He was very confident in this. Feng Moran's words made Lung Ruoxue feel a little embarrassed because she really didn't think that she had helped Big Brother Feng in any way. Instead, because there were too many things to do, she had neglected Big Brother Feng. When she thought of this, she couldn't help but feel guilty. At this time, seeing that their Miss Hongguegua had ignored them, Grape and Lotus Seed pouted their pink lips in dissatisfaction and said in unison, "Young miss, we've also advanced to God King." When the two of them said this, their expressions were full of resentment, which made everyone a little amused. Lung Ruoxue didn't know whether to laugh or cry at their cross-off. Lung Ruoxue pretended to be confused and asked, "Weren't you all on the verge of becoming God Kings?" After being in seclusion for such a long time, advancing to the God King level was something that would happen naturally. Wasn't this very normal? I would be more surprised if you didn't make a breakthrough. As soon as he said that, everyone couldn't help but laugh. But after laughing, Feng De and the others were depressed. "Young miss, I wasn't able to advance to the God King level," Feng De said with a bitter face. "Oh, it's within my expectations. If you have half of Big Brother Feng's cultivation strength, you can also advance to the God King level." Lung Ruoxue said, "Yes, Mrs. Right. In the future, you two brothers should focus on cultivation. Miss has us by her side." Cheng Wu chuckled evilly as he echoed. The few of them had all advanced to the God King realm. Chapter 1974, Class Discrimination, 3. How can we do that? The young lady needs us more, you guys are not as smart as us. Hearing this, Feng De immediately retorted, while Cheng Wu only replied coldly, "But we've already advanced to the God King stage. Isn't it obvious which one is more practical?" Cheng Wu's following words made Feng De completely depressed. "Boo! What a bully! He's just taking advantage of the fact that he's cultivated longer than them, right? As long as they worked hard in their cultivation, it wouldn't be long before they could advance as they wished. However, they wouldn't be satisfied just by becoming a God King. They wanted to advance to become a godly emperor or even a reverent god. Well, see who's more powerful then." Feng De's fighting spirit was incited. He turned to Lung Ruoxue and said, "Miss, I'm too weak now. I request to continue my closed-door cultivation." Then he looked at Lin Yuan and the others and said, "All of you will also enter closed-door cultivation with me. If we don't become divine emperors, we won't be able to come out." Feng De was determined. God Emperor? Captain, do you have to set such a big goal for yourself?" When Lin Yuan and the rest heard this, they immediately frowned. A divine emperor. It was so far away and he didn't know when he would be able to achieve it. If they were unable to advance, didn't that mean that they would have to go into seclusion forever? How boring that would be. Just thinking about it made Lin Yuan and the others feel fear. "Farmias, I originally wanted to advance to Reverend God level before coming out of seclusion. Right now, we only require you to reach the strength of a divine emperor. Why are you all talking so much nonsense?" Feng De rebuked angrily, his handsome face full of disappointment. "Ah, Reverend God level." Lin Yuan and the rest were completely speechless. When the great elder heard Feng De's words, he said with a smile, "Little brat. Not bad, you have ideals and revenge. I'll wait for the day you become a reverend god, but before that, let's take a photo together. Otherwise, if I don't see you for too long, I'm afraid I'll forget what you look like." As soon as the first elder finished speaking, the crowd burst into laughter. "Ha, Feng De, since we brothers are together, we naturally have to take a photo together and leave a memory or something. I'm afraid we won't even recognize you when you come out of seclusion. How sad will you be then? Come. Those who want to take a photo with me, line up. No one is allowed to snatch it." Cheng Wu said with a gloating smile. After he finished speaking, he put his arm around Feng De's shoulder and took out a memory crystal to take a picture of the two of them. Seeing this, Feng De was furious. Then, the great elder took over Cheng Wu's position and did the same thing. After all, he was the one who came up with the idea, but now Cheng Wu was the one who took the lead. Therefore, he was a little unhappy and the photo took longer. He even asked Feng De to make a few poses, which made Feng De so depressed that he wanted to bang his head against the wall. After the great elder had finally finished bidding, someone else continued to move forward. They didn't even give Feng De a chance to refuse. The overlord forced himself on Feng De, which made him so angry that he stomped his feet. Unfortunately, none of these people were afraid of him. Therefore, he had wasted his time. Seeing that Feng Die's face was red from anger, Leng Ruoxue was kind enough not to kick him when he was down. Instead, she said to Feng De and the rest, "It's rare for you to have such ambition, so I naturally have to fulfill your wish. So, you can go back and continue your closed-door cultivation now. Goodbye." With that, Leng Ruoxue even waved goodbye to them, causing Feng De and the rest to be depressed and gain 3 levels. When Qing Wu and the rest saw this, they naturally cooperated with their miss and chased Feng De and the rest back to their rooms. "Arg! Don't be like this, I don't intend to continue my closed-door cultivation." These words echoed in Leng Ruoxue and the others' ears from time to time. However, they were all ignored. The moment Feng De and the others left, the weakest of those who remained were god kings. Following that, Leng Ruoxue then told her grandfather and the rest about the situation outside. The reason why she took advantage of the situation and sent Feng De and the rest back to continue their closed-door cultivation was for their safety. After all, the strength of those people outside was not to be underestimated. Although Feng De and the others were very smart, the difference in strength between the two sides was not small. Therefore, she could not take the risk and was even more afraid that she would not be able to take care of Feng De and the others. Therefore, the best way was to let them continue their closed-door cultivation, and this was also suggested by them. Of course, this was completely under the premise that they were not aware of the danger outside. Otherwise, if they knew that someone was attacking their house, they would definitely not request to go into seclusion right now. However, Leng Ruoxue would never give them the chance to find out. The moment Feng De and the rest were placed into the bracelet, Green Vessel immediately arranged for them to go into closed-door cultivation according to Leng Ruoxue's request. They could not come out until they advanced in rank. Now, it was difficult for them to come out even if they wanted to. After Leng Qingtian and the others understood the situation, they initially frowned. However, their faces quickly broke into smiles. This was definitely a good opportunity for them to test their strength. However, the strength of the people outside was still much higher than theirs, so they had to think of a way that had the best of both worlds. Otherwise, they would only become cannon fodder. "Shui, do you have any good ideas?" After some thought, Leng Qingtian asked Leng Ruoxue with a face full of anticipation. This granddaughter of his had a lot of wicked ideas. Therefore, he didn't bother to think about it. "No, I didn't. I heard that their leader, that Patian, is extremely powerful. He was a great demon of the immortal realm hundreds of thousands of years ago, but I don't know what level his strength is now." Leng Ruoxue asked curiously. "He'll go out and test it out and he will know." The demon said immediately. "He'll go." Uncle Long said calmly as he glanced at the demon. Among them, he was the only one who had fought against the Heaven Splitter and had a certain understanding of it. Therefore, he was the most suitable person to go out. More importantly, Shui had come out of seclusion, so she could naturally control the defensive array at will. In this way, after he went out, the safety of the people in the house would not be a concern. After hiding in the house for so long, his hands were already itching. Now that he could finally go out and break the heavens, how could he let go of such an opportunity? "Uncle Long, I'll go out with you." At this moment, Leng Ruoxue said with a faint smile. There were so many people outside, how could she let Uncle Long go out by himself? "I'll join you too." The evildoer said without even thinking. It was said that Patian was a lecherous person, so for Shui-er's safety he naturally had to protect her closely. "Miss, we also need to go out and meet those people." Seeing that their miss was planning to charge out, Qing Wu and the others, who had been silent all this while, were naturally not willing to let go of this opportunity. One should know that they had been keeping a low profile for a long time. Furthermore, they were once warlike people who were hot-blooded. Naturally, they would not want to miss the opportunity to fight alongside Leng Ruoxue. Hearing Cheng Wu's words, Leng Ruoxue looked at her grandfather, Big Brother, and Big Brother Feng, who were also looking forward to it. She nodded her head in agreement. However, before she left, she still worriedly reminded, "All of you be careful. If you can't win in a one-on-one fight, then fight as a group." Hee hee. Don't worry, miss. We know that we will not be at a disadvantage in this. Cheng Wu promised. He did not care about combat etiquette. In his opinion, as long as he could defeat the other party, any method could be used. However, Shen Nuo, who had never heard of such mobilization before a battle, could not help but open her mouth, dumbstruck. After all, according to the rules of the firmament, unless there was a clear rule, one-on-one battles were all tacitly agreed upon. If someone wanted to fight with numbers, then even if that person won the battle in the end, he would be looked down upon by others. However, this tacitly agreed rule did not apply to Leng Ruoxue and the others. This was because this was not the first time he had seen Leng Ruoxue and the others gang up on others. However, this was the first time he had heard Leng Ruoxue say it so openly. However, Shen Nuo's mental endurance was obviously not weak, and he accepted new things more quickly. Therefore, he only froze for a moment before he calmed down, and even showed signs of being assimilated. He even chuckled and said to Liwei, I'm not good at fighting. Why don't we join forces? I think it's fine. Liwei nodded in agreement. Although he had the strength of a divine emperor, he spent most of his time and energy on alchemy. As such, he was not very good at fighting. Now that he had Shen Nuo's suggestion, he naturally had no reason to object. However, upon hearing their words, Flowing Maple was displeased. Lu Feng's eyes widened as he angrily said, If you guys join forces, what about me? I don't like to fight either. You and Grandpa will work together. Lu Yue suggested. No. We're both blacksmiths, and we don't have any advantages together. You and that old man will be in a group, and he'll be in a group with Shen Nuo. This way, we can complement each other. It's decided. Yes. Lu Feng said firmly. After hearing his words, Lu Yu and the others thought about it for a moment and agreed. However, Leng Ruoxue's words were like a bucket of cold water that splashed onto their heads, causing their enthusiasm to be completely shattered. I'm not planning to let you guys go out and fight. Leng Ruoxue's beautiful eyes glanced at the excited Lu Feng and the others as she spoke indifferently. It's more suitable for you to stay in the house. Uncle Long chimed in. Instantly, the four of them became even more depressed. Why? Lu Feng's eyes widened as he asked with an indignant expression. You're either artifact masters or alchemy masters, and your status in the immortal realm is quite high. Of course, you have to be protected. Leng Ruoxue replied matter-of-factly. Leng Ruoxue, you're being biased. The moment Leng Ruoxue said that, Lu Feng was instantly enraged. They even shouted Leng Ruoxue's name. However, Leng Ruoxue was not moved at all. Chapter 1975, Genius vs. Heaven Splitter, 1. Leng Ruoxue raised her eyebrows slightly and said in a calm tone, I'm looking down on you, so what? She couldn't bully the first elder, and Liwei and Shen Nuo weren't close, so how could she not bully Lu Feng? Leng Ruoxue laughed evilly as she thought to herself. When Lu Feng heard Leng Ruoxue's bold words, his eyes widened in disbelief. That damn girl, did he hear her wrong? Did he just admit it? She actually dared to admit it. This was preposterous. Lu Feng's anger was boiling. However, other than glaring at Leng Ruoxue fiercely, he really did not know what to do with her. This was because he kept feeling a warning gaze on him. He did not need to look to know that the demonic man was warning him not to bully that wretched girl. But by the heavens! Was there any justice left in this world? He was the one who was being bullied. Lu Feng felt extremely aggrieved. However, that pair of eyes were extremely sharp. Thinking about it, he really couldn't afford to offend her. However, he really couldn't accept being looked down upon by that wretched girl Leng Ruoxue. So what if he was a blacksmith? After all, he was a divine emperor. How could he let this brat look down on him? If this were to spread out, how would he be able to face others in the future? He could not be threatened by evil forces. At this moment, Leng Ruoxue and the evildoer had already become synonymous with evil forces in his heart. He was an oppressed working person, so he had to rise up and resist. Fight for the rights and interests that you deserve. I'm a divine emperor. After a long while, Lu Feng gritted his teeth and said, I know. However, there was still a gap between divine emperors, right? As for you, a divine emperor, I'm afraid you've only fought a few times. Lung Ruoxue said. Who said that? When I was fighting, you weren't even born yet. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue had guessed correctly, Lu Feng could not help but shout with a red face. Really? If you win, I'll let you go out and fight with those people outside. If you lose, you'll just stay in the house and watch the show. How about it? Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Are you sure you want to fight me? I'm a divine emperor. Lu Feng could not help but remind her. In reality, he was not willing to fight with a freak like Lung Ruoxue because he had no confidence that he could win against her. However, he would not say this out loud. Firstly, it would be embarrassing. Secondly, it would boost the morale of others and diminish his own prestige. However, that was what he really thought in his heart. What's wrong with the Divine Emperor? Do you think that you can defeat me as a Divine Emperor? Lung Ruoxue deliberately put on an arrogant look as she spoke. Her beautiful eyes were even sizing up Lu Feng from head to toe. The disdain on her beautiful face was also red and there was no need to hide it at all. Seeing Lung Ruoxue's expression, Lu Feng felt that he had been triggered. This wretched girl was really looking down on him. Of course. Hence, Flowing Maple's nod was very heavy. Then let's have a contest. Lung Ruoxue said with a faint smile. After she finished speaking, she grabbed Lu Feng's lapels and brought him to her family's martial arts practice field. Ever since it was built, it had never been used. Today, Lung Ruoxue had decided to use it as the main venue for her first battle show after her rank advancement. Uncle Long and the others naturally followed behind the two. Fuck, can Lu Feng beat that little girl? As they walked, Shen Nua asked in a small voice, still a little worried. However, his small voice was heard clearly by the people around him. Your Excellency Lu Feng is definitely no match for my young lady. Before Lu Wei could answer, Cheng Wu eagerly rushed to answer. Actually, I also think that Feng is looking for death. Lu Yue sighed helplessly when he heard Wan Wu's words. He didn't have high hopes for Lu Feng either. I'm not looking for death, but I want to die more thoroughly. The great elder's words were extremely vicious, not taking into account that Lu Feng was his own grandson. When Uncle Long heard the discussion, he also joined in and said, Your Lu Feng has a very sacrificial spirit. He knows that Shuer has just broken through, so he wants to be cannon fodder for her to practice her skills. Not bad. He's a good kid. That's a must. He was a man. Those with thick skin and flesh have to be mentally prepared to be used as cannon fodder at any time. This is nothing. Uncle Long's words made the great elder humble. These words naturally reached Lu Feng's ears, who was being dragged along by Lung Ruoxue. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. What kind of people were these? Were these people really his family and friends? Why are all of you kicking me when I'm down? The more Lu Feng thought about it, the more depressed he became. The anger in his heart had reached its peak, and his body seemed to be burning with flames of anger as he walked, exuding a fierce aura. However, he was being held tightly by Lung Ruoxue, so even if he was unusually angry, he still looked a little comical. Furthermore, Uncle Long and the others would not care about his anger, so he was completely ignored. Along the way, he was talked about by many people. By the time he reached the martial arts practice field, Flowing Maple had already turned into a fire-breathing T-Rex. First Elder and the others actually laughed out loud when they saw his face turning black from anger and his hair standing on end. This caused Lu Feng's anger to rise to the next level, becoming a monstrous rage. You guys? Just wait and see. You'll regret it if you look down on me. Lu Feng's heart ached from anger and he nearly vomited blood, but First Elder and the others did not take it to heart. Upon seeing this, Lu Feng had the urge to bang his head against the wall. These people were really too much. Wasn't he their family or friend? How could they do this? Lu Feng felt indignant. The gaze he directed at Lung Ruoxue also became sharper. Little girl, even though you're very strong, but I'm confident that you're not my match. So, you've lost for sure. Lu Feng, who had been provoked, was bursting with confidence as he shouted heroically. In fact, when he said these words, he felt guilty, but he didn't want to be looked down upon by these hateful guys. So, he had to be a man. Otherwise, how could he show off in front of these people in the future? That's what I wanted to say. He's just an immortal emperor, I don't care about him at all. Lung Ruoxue naturally could not show any weakness to Lu Fengquang. Hence, she became even more aggressive. Let's go in. Lung Ruoxue continued. The area of the newly built martial arts practice field was very large and the facilities inside were also first class. Although there was only one transparent ring now, the cost of this one ring alone was almost half the value of the entire martial arts practice field. This was because the stage was made of top-grade crystals. Moreover, it was a colorless top-grade crystal. It was the first time that the Great Elder and the others had seen this arena, and they couldn't help but gasp. How extravagant was this girl? They actually used colorless top-grade crystals to build the arena. Chapter 1976, Genius vs. Heaven Splitter, 2. One had to know that colorless top-grade crystals were extremely rare. Furthermore, their value was extremely high. This was mainly because its spiritual qi could be absorbed by deities of any element. In addition, the spirit-gathering effect of colorless top-grade crystals was better than top-grade crystals of other elements. Now, when the First Elder and the others saw such a large piece of colorless top-grade crystal being used to build an arena and placed in front of them, the shock in their hearts couldn't be described with words. However, Uncle Long was much calmer. Although it was Uncle Long's first time in the martial arts practice field and his first time seeing the arena made of top-grade colorless crystals, he knew that the reason Shui was so generous was because she had made a fortune in the secret realm. Otherwise, she would not have been willing to part with it. As for Lung Ruoxue, when she saw everyone's shocked expressions, she could not help but laugh evilly in her heart. She just wanted to surprise them. However, one should not let one's fertile water flow into others' fields. The arena in her house was naturally used by her own family, so of course, it had to be built better. Shui, how many colorless top-grade crystals had he used up? You're really generous. After a long while, the Great Elder finally recovered from his shock and said with a smacked tongue. He thought he was very rich, but now he knew that compared to Shui, there was still a gap. Not much, just a few tens of thousands. Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. Tens of thousands isn't a lot? You prodigal. When Lu Feng heard this, he was so angry that he was about to stomp his feet. First Elder and the others were also rather embarrassed. Look at how generous they are, even tens of thousands of yuan is not too much. How am I a prodigal? You can cultivate here, this is called an investment, understand? Lung Ruoxue spoke the truth. After she finished speaking, she even shot a look of disdain at Lu Feng, as if to say, you don't even understand this. Lu Feng was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood again. Taking a few deep breaths, Lu Feng suppressed the anger in his heart and asked through gritted teeth, didn't you want to compete with me? Hurry up and start. If this continued, who knew what kind of blow he would be dealt? Since you're in such a hurry, I'll fulfill your wish. Lung Ruoxue's smile was as light as the wind. I won't go easy on you, so you better be prepared. He added. With that, Lung Ruoxue leaped up and jumped onto the stage. Not to be outdone, Flowing Maple followed closely behind, and when he reached the ring, he said angrily, who needs you to go easy on me? However, I would like to remind you that if you lose later, don't cry. I won't show any mercy to a woman. The same. Both of them. I won't have any tender feelings for you. Lung Ruoxue said in an infuriating manner. When Cheng Wu and the rest heard Lung Ruoxue's words, they couldn't help but chuckle. When Lu Feng heard this laughter, his face turned even redder. Hurry up and start. Flowing Maple knew that he couldn't wait any longer. Otherwise, he wouldn't even be able to wait for the match to start. He was about to be angered to death by this wretched girl. Could receive my attack. With a thought, a sword as thin as a cicada's wing appeared in Lung Ruoxue's snow-white hand. The blade of the sword was shimmering with a cold light, and the sword gleam was so sharp that it was almost tangible. With a slight twist of her wrist, thousands of fiery red meteors flew towards Flowing Maple from all directions. Needless to say, this was her favorite meteor sword technique. As for Flowing Maple, when he saw this, he hurriedly dodged in all directions, his mouth constantly screaming, "Arg! You are too despicable, how could you use this move on me?" Lu Feng knew very well that this girl would use this sword technique the most against her enemies, but he had never thought that he would have the chance to taste it today. What a twist of fate. He was very depressed. I said I wouldn't go easy on you. Going all out in a battle with an opponent was also the greatest respect for the enemy. So, take this. Don't worry. I didn't inject my life flame. Lung Ruoxue chuckled as she teased him. Right now, she was definitely much more relaxed than the flustered Lu Feng. On the other hand, Lu Feng was so focused on dodging her meteor shower that he had even forgotten to attack. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue was happy to be at peace. When the crowd below the stage saw Lu Feng's flustered appearance, they couldn't help but sigh deeply. They were extremely helpless in this regard. Lu Feng was about to have a tragedy. This was the only thought in their minds at this moment. Moreover, they had been completely defeated in one move. This was really too much of a blow. After Lung Ruoxue used Meteor Shower, she stood at the side and watched the show with ease. She even reminded Lu Feng from time to time where to pay attention, causing him to be depressed to death. After a while, Flowing Maple immediately admitted defeat. I won't compete. He couldn't compete anymore. This brat was such a bully. And her meteor shower was also a bully. Because no matter how he dodged, he couldn't avoid the attacks of the meteor shower. Although he did not feel much pain when the meteor shower hit him, his clothes were all ruined. If this continued, he would have to run naked. At the thought of this, he had no other choice but to admit defeat. Moreover, he swore that he would never fight with this wretched girl again. This was simply bullying. He hadn't even used a single move, and he was already half dead from exhaustion. What was he after? Since you've admitted defeat, then you can just stay in the house and watch the show. Lung Ruoxue didn't allow any room for rejection. AI. Knowing that Lung Ruoxue had already made up her mind, First Elder and the others could only sigh. They couldn't possibly be like that fool, Lu Feng, and go up to the arena to fight with that little girl Xue. Therefore, it was better to give up on the idea of fighting the enemy as soon as possible. Otherwise, it would only be a waste of time. Uncle Long glanced at the First Elder and the others. Seeing that they had acquiesced, he said directly, "Xue, since they don't have any objections, let's go out and settle the score with Potin and the others." Uncle Long began to rub his hands together. Although the Ning family's kid had avenged the beasts of the endless ocean, he was the one who had avenged them. He hadn't even done anything yet. Let's go out after I repair the array." Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. With that, she immediately went to the core of the array. She had set the core of the array in an unremarkable corner of the garden. Outside, it was covered by a group of flowers, which could be considered an open-air secret room. At this moment, out of the tens of thousands of formations in the core of the array, half of them had stopped working and had dimmed. Seeing this, Lung Ruoxue took out countless top-grade crystals and placed them into the array. At the same time, she cast countless complicated spells. Not long after, the array that had been paralyzed started to operate normally again. A large amount of crystal stones was required to maintain the operation of the array. The higher the quality of the crystal stones, the more effective the array would be. Hence, the crystal stones that Lung Ruoxue used to set up the great skyguarding array were all of the best quality, and the amount required was shocking. Because the array had been broken previously, many of the best quality crystal stones were damaged. Hence, this time, she had invested quite a lot of best quality crystal stones. It was fortunate that she had such a large sum of money. If it were someone else, they would have gone bankrupt long ago. Chapter 1977, Genius vs. Heaven Splitter, 3. However, for the sake of her own safety, it was worth it no matter how much she invested. Hence, Lung Ruoxue would not be stingy. After Lung Ruoxue had fixed the array, Tu Liang, who was breaking the array outside the house, immediately sensed it and turned pale with fright. How could this be possible? The formation was back to normal. All his previous efforts had been in vain. This fact made Tu Liang extremely dispirited. He had worked so hard for so long and had only solved half of the array with great difficulty. But now he had done it for nothing. How could he bear this? Suddenly, Tu Liang felt suffocated in his chest. A fishy smell rushed up from his throat. Everything in front of him turned black. Then, with a loud dong sound, he passed out. Tu Liang, what's wrong with you? Puotian, who was not far away, saw this and quickly teleported to Tu Liang's side to help him up. When he saw his pale face and a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, he thought that Tu Liang had fainted because of mental and physical exhaustion. He stuffed a pill into his mouth, and not long after, he woke up. As soon as he woke up, Tu Liang was still a little confused. He even asked foolishly, "Big brother, what's wrong with me? You fainted because you overexerted yourself." Puotian explained. "Oh." Tu Liang nodded. His eyes sparkled as he remembered everything. He said hurriedly, "No. Big brother, I didn't faint because I was overworked. It's because the array that I had previously solved had been repaired, and I couldn't take the shock for a moment, so I fainted from anger." What's the meaning of this? Padian didn't understand. All the formations that I've solved before are useless now. The formation master who set up the sky guarding formation has completely restored the defensive formation. So, all my efforts have been in vain. Tu Liang explained weakly. This fact had hit him hard. Since he had become an array master, he had never encountered such a thing. Therefore, this was a fatal blow to him, a genius array master in the eyes of others. He knew very well that he had lost. He had lost to the person in the house who was even more talented in formations. That person's strength could definitely be called a formation grandmaster, so he did not lose in vain. However, he was not willing to accept this. After all, he had not seen the person in person, so he always felt that he had lost in a rather aggrieved manner. At this moment, the door of the house opened. A group of people walked out from inside, led by a handsome man and beautiful woman duo of 2 men and a woman. These 3 people were none other than Uncle Long, Lung Ruoxue, and Evildoer. After the 3 of them came out, they quietly stood in front of the door. Cheng Wu and the others followed closely behind. However, none of them spoke. Instead, they sized up Puotian and the others. When Padian and the others saw Lung Ruoxue and the others, they were slightly surprised. However, they quickly calmed down and even felt a sense of ecstasy in their hearts. They had never dreamed that the people in the house would come out of their own accord. Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes swept across Patian, who was as handsome as a demon. She then said, "You're Padian?" "I am. May I know how to address you, miss?" Padian asked with a graceful smile. When he saw Lung Ruoxue, he couldn't help but be amazed. He had lived for so long and had seen countless beautiful women. However, this was the first time he had seen such a beautiful woman who was noble, pure, and alluring. After seeing Lung Ruoxue, his heart, which had been silent for a long time, seemed to be stirred up again. He had taken a fancy to this woman. "Lung Ruoxue." Lung Ruoxue said indifferently, deliberately ignoring the message that she had to get from the heaven-cleaving eyes. Although this man's looks were not inferior to that of a demon, she did not like this person. What a nice name. Padian smiled charmingly. His dark eyes kept on sending sparks to Lung Ruoxue as he praised her. However, when he saw that Lung Ruoxue was a little cold to him and seemed to be a little unhappy, his desire to win her heart grew even stronger. He loved to challenge the difficult. If Lung Ruoxue saw him and immediately fell in love with him like other women, he might not even be interested in her. This was a man's deep-rooted bad nature. Did the heaven-breaking pavilion come here to praise my name? Lung Ruoxue asked curiously. Of course not. Padian laughed and even threw Lung Ruoxue a charming look. Then what is the meaning of Sir Padian bringing so many people to besiege my family? Do we have a grudge? Lung Ruoxue ignored him and continued to ask, purposely showing her anger on her face. Miss Lung, please don't misunderstand us. We're only here to save someone and have no intention of hurting Miss Lung. Padian saw that the beauty seemed even more beautiful when she was angry, so he quickly explained. Is that so? Lung Ruoxue didn't really believe him. She then changed the topic and asked, who are you guys here to save? The person I want to save is the head of the Wen family. I hope that Miss Lung can give me some face and let him go. Padian discussed with good words. If possible, he wanted to leave a good impression on the beauty. Therefore, his attitude was also very gentle. When his subordinates saw Potion's appearance, they knew that their big brother was moved by this woman. However, this woman was indeed beautiful. If their big brother could get her when he was tired of playing with her, maybe he would reward them. Thinking of this, many people's hearts also rippled with love. Qin Ju, who had read their dirty thoughts, immediately told Lung Ruoxue everything he had found out. After Lung Ruoxue heard it, her expression became even calmer and she did not make a sound. However, these people were already dead in her heart. If it was someone else, I would give the heaven-cleaving pavilion some face, but that old man from the Wen family can't. I have a grudge against him. I can't let him go back to the mountain. Before she came out, Lung Ruoxue had already heard about the Wen family head, Black One, and the others from Uncle Long. Hence, she had already guessed that Padian had come for one of them. However, even if the Divine Master had come personally, she could not let these three people go. Miss Ling, as long as you're willing to let the head of the Wen family go, I can promise you that he won't seek revenge on you again. Is that okay? Padian immediately promised after hearing Lung Ruoxue's words. His legs are his. Don't tell me that the heaven-cleaving pavilion can tie the old man of the Wen family to his eyes all day long? So, I'm sorry, but I still have the same words. I can't let her go. Lung Ruoxue was unmoved. Miss Lung, you're really stubborn. In fact, my suggestion is the best choice for you. After all, you won't get any benefits from being my enemy, so you'd better consider my opinion. It'll definitely guarantee your safety. Padian said with a face full of affection. Of course, he would ensure Lung Ruoxue's safety. Before he was tired of her, how could he let others have the chance to hurt her? There's no need to think about it. I've always believed that it's better to rely on myself than on others, so I'll protect myself well. There's no need for Sir Padian to worry. Lung Ruoxue replied in a very clear manner. Her answer also made Potion's anger rise. However, he still maintained a good demeanor on the surface, and there was a slight smile on his lips, but God knew how angry he was in his heart. That damned woman. You're really refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. My big brother has always been thinking for you, and you actually dare to not appreciate it. You're really looking for death. At this time, one of the people beside Padian couldn't help but feel indignant for Padian. However, when Padian heard this, he deliberately rebuked the subordinate who spoke up for him. You're not allowed to be rude to Miss Lung. Apologize to Miss Lung quickly. Padian ordered with a stern face. There's no need for an apology, your subordinate is speaking the truth. Without giving the person a chance to speak, Lung Ruoxue said. She did not want to continue watching them perform. Miss Lung, Padian still wanted to explain, but he was interrupted by Lung Ruoxue with a wave of her hand. Sir Padian, you don't have to persuade me anymore. No matter what you say, I won't let old man Wen go. If you want to take him away, you can. Over my dead body. Lung Ruoxue said ruthlessly with a hint of impatience in her beautiful eyes. It seems that Miss Lung is more stubborn than I thought. Forget it. Padian sneered. I'll let Miss Lung be sincerely convinced. However, by then I won't just be taking away Master Wen alone. I'm also taking you with me. If you want to take my woman away, you'll have to step over my dead body first. Otherwise, don't even think about it. Hearing Padian's words, the demon sneered. Your woman? Ha! You won't be very soon. Padian glanced at the evildoer who was as handsome as him with contempt and looked back at him. Their eyes collided, and electric sparks flickered continuously. It looked like a battle was about to break out. You're that confident? The heaven-breaking words made the demon raise his eyebrows. Very good. He liked confident guys. Beating him up like this would give him a greater sense of accomplishment. Should I not be confident? Pidion asked as he sized up the demon. He was just a divine emperor, yet he dared to act tough in front of him. Wasn't this courting death? From the bottom of his heart, he had never looked up to evildoers. Furthermore, he would let Lung Ruoxue know that it was not enough for a man to just have a pretty face. Strength was the capital to be tough with one's words. We should. However, I'm going to make you more confident. After the demon finished speaking, he rushed towards Pidion like a meteor. Pidion, who had long been prepared, was also ready to fight. In an instant, the two figures were entangled. Chapter 1978. Who exactly are you? 1. The two figures were as fast as lightning and as agile as dragons. In an instant, they dazzled everyone's eyes. Cheng Wu and the rest could not even bear to shift their eyes away. The battle intent between the two was too strong. This was a true battle between experts. Cheng Wu and the rest were extremely excited when they saw the two men clashing in the air. However, the people who were eyeing them like prey were too annoying. They were even affecting their interest in watching the battle between experts. Thinking of this, Cheng Wu and the rest looked at each other. Immediately after, they rushed towards those eyesores like shooting stars. Shuer, Grandpa is going to play with them too. When Lung Qingtian saw that Cheng Wu and the rest had also made their move, his hands were itching for a fight. After he greeted Lung Ruoxue, he also rushed into the battle without any hesitation. After that, Lung Ruhan flew out as well. Lung Ruoxue looked at how anxious they were and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. No one was snatching it from them, so why were they in such a hurry? This bunch of detestable brats, they actually dare to snatch my person. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue heard Uncle Long's angry words. Instantly, a few black lines slid down her forehead. Uncle Long! Lung Ruoxue called out softly, but Uncle Long didn't have the time to care about her. He said, "Girl, I'm going too." Then, like a stream of light, it charged into the chaotic battle. Was she being abandoned? Looking at her lonely self, Lung Ruoxue was at a loss for words. She did not know what to say. This bunch of people did not even think of calling her over when they had a fight. They had really gone too far. With this thought in mind, Lung Ruoxue's beautiful eyes searched for the fish that had slipped through the net among the people in the chaotic battle. However, to her disappointment, all of the opponents had opponents. Uncle Long was even fighting 1 against 5, taking up several of the opponent's spots. However, Lung Ruoxue did not want to let go of this good opportunity to practice. Her beautiful eyes darted around, thinking about who she should snatch one from. However, before she could do anything, Uncle Long had already taken care of the opponents in her hands. He started snatching people from Cheng Wu and the others again. Lung Ruoxue felt even more depressed when she saw this. Suddenly, she caught sight of a guy who was half lying on the ground from the corner of her eye. She quickly walked over to him. At this time, Tu Liang, who was leaning against a rock, felt that the light above him was blocked. He quickly raised his head and saw a devastatingly beautiful woman standing in front of him. Her beautiful face was full of disdain. Immediately, Tu Liang was depressed. He was a relatively rare array master and tool master in the divine realm. No matter where he went, he was always coaxed and flattered by people. However, now, he was despised by a woman. This fact hurt his self-esteem too much. However, he also knew that this was not the time to hurt his self-esteem, because this woman was his enemy. And it was obvious that they were coming for him. Tu Liang himself had the strength of a god king. If it was in the past, he might not be afraid of Lung Ruoxue. However, he had been injured due to extreme anger. In addition, he had used up too much energy in the Great Skyguarding Formation. Therefore, the current him was so weak that he could be defeated by a single person. Hence, when he saw Lung Ruoxue, he immediately raised his guard. However, even if he was on his guard, it would be of no use if Lung Ruoxue had her eyes on him. Tu Liang was not clear about Lung Ruoxue's personality, so he could only pretend to be calm and wait to see what would happen. Lung Ruox's smile was as dazzling as 100 flowers blooming when she saw the calm-looking man. Tu Liang, on the other hand, was dazed and stunned for a moment when he saw her smile. However, he quickly regained his senses and became calmer. When Lung Ruoxue saw this, she couldn't help but secretly praise him. As expected of an array master, this level of concentration was not something ordinary people could match. "What's your name?" Lung Ruoxue suddenly asked. She had seen this man solve the array on the screen before, so she was very interested in him. "I'm Tu Liang." Tu Liang replied. Then he looked at Lung Ruoxue curiously. His expression seemed to be asking, "What's the matter?" Tu Liang intended to lower his presence as much as possible so that this woman wouldn't treat him as an enemy. In fact, he never thought that he was here to cause them trouble. He was only invited to dispel the formation. The fighting and killing had nothing to do with him. However, this was only his wishful thinking. Since he was here, he could not stay out of it. "I'm Lung Ruoxue." Lung Ruoxue introduced herself again. "I know," Tu Liang nodded and thought, "I'm not deaf. Of course, I heard you. You're injured, right?" Looking at Tu Liang's pale face, Lung Ruoxue started to find a topic to talk about. "Yes, I've already taken some pills. I'm almost fully recovered." Tu Liang answered honestly, but he was puzzled. What did this woman want? She didn't look like she was here to care about him. But now, the two of them were very strange, as if they were chatting about daily life. This was really too strange. "Then let's have a competition." Lung Ruoxue had finally revealed her motive. "Ah." Tu Liang was a little dumbfounded. Was this considered a leap of thought? He couldn't understand Lung Ruox's actions. After chatting with him for so long, her final goal was still to compete? Then why did she say so much nonsense before? He was a little angry. "How is it?" Lung Ruox's face was filled with anticipation. "I haven't fully recovered from my injuries. I'll definitely lose if I compete with you, so is there still a need to compete?" Tu Liang said with self-awareness. "Of course." Lung Ruoxue nodded her head seriously. But I don't think it's necessary." Tu Liang spoke the truth. The two of them competing was purely a waste of time. However, how could he understand Lung Ruox's overly bored feelings? One must know that there were so many opponents, but he didn't have a share. What kind of feeling was that? "It's very necessary." Lung Ruox's stubbornness was back. "What do you want to do to me? Why don't you just say it?" Tu Liang was determined not to compete with Lung Ruoxue. The current him was very tired. "Aren't you an array master?" "Of course, I want to take you under my wing." Lung Ruoxue said with a smile. "I'm sorry, but I'm already taken." When Tu Liang heard this, he said with a tinge of regret. He didn't think that Lung Ruoxue would dare to snatch someone from the Yao clan. Of course, he didn't plan to reveal that he was a member of the Yao clan. "That's why I want to compete with you. If I win, you'll be my prisoner, and you'll be able to do whatever I want." Lung Ruoxue replied matter-of-factly, but her words left Tu Liang dumbfounded. So this was what it meant? No wonder Lung Ruoxue was so insistent on competing with him. However, looking at the current situation, it seemed that even if this woman didn't compete with him, he wouldn't be able to escape, right? Hence, he could not understand Lung Ruox's thoughts. Chapter 1979. Who exactly are you two? In reality, Lung Ruoxue had requested to compete with Tu Liang because she was bored. She had also wanted to tease him. "Even if we don't compete, I don't think I can escape. So why waste time?" Tu Liang reminded her with good intentions while secretly glancing at the situation on the field not far away. "I know. But I'm bored and they're all fighting. I'm the only one without an opponent, so you'll have to fulfill my wish." Lung Ruoxue laughed evilly. "Ah." After hearing Lung Ruox's words, the gloominess in Tu Liang's heart couldn't be described with words. Why was this woman toying with him? "I admit defeat, okay?" Tu Liang said in a low voice after a while. "What do you think?" Lung Ruoxue did not answer but asked a question instead, her expression showing her dissatisfaction. As soon as he heard this, Tu Liang knew that he couldn't admit defeat. At the same time, he also knew that this woman was not just bored. The person who fought with my big brother is your man, right? Tu Liang quickly changed the topic. Yes. Lung Ruoxuan nodded her head and waited for him to continue. My big brother is very strong. Your man may not be able to beat him. If you're really that bored, why don't you go and help your man? Why bother me? Tu Liang kindly suggested, but in his heart he silently apologized to Panin. I'm sorry, big brother. He had no other choice. Otherwise, he wouldn't have used this move to divert the disaster. When Lung Ruoxue heard Tu Liang's words, she couldn't help but widen her eyes as if she had just heard a fantasy story. Her clear and limpid eyes made Tu Liang's heart feel guilty, and his conscience felt extremely uneasy. You're really a good brother of Padian. Lung Ruoxue stared at Tu Liang for a long time before saying this. Tu Liang lowered his head in shame. After that, Lung Ruoxue changed the topic. She patted Tu Liang's shoulder like a brother and praised him. You're a smart guy. I admire you. As a human, if a man doesn't do it for himself, the heavens will punish him. Therefore, your thinking is completely correct. These words made Tu Liang's face even redder. However, he didn't know how to refute it. He could only feel waves of regret in his heart. He should not have said it so bluntly. On account of your deep brotherhood, I'll fulfill your wish. Lung Ruoxue continued. Then, she took out a translucent white silk from her bangle. With a light flick of her right hand, the white silk seemed to have a life of its own. It wrapped itself tightly around Tu Liang's body. Tu Liang struggled for a while, but seeing that he couldn't break free, he could only accept his fate. Lung Ruoxue was very satisfied with Tu Liang's look of admitting defeat. After patting his head like she was petting a puppy, she immediately leaped into the air and flew towards the direction of the battle between Puotian and the demon. Seeing that Lung Ruoxue had finally changed her target, Tu Liang heaved a sigh of relief in his heart. However, when he saw Bai Ling who had tied him up, he felt depressed again. Needless to say, he also knew that this white silk was definitely a divine artifact with a binding function. So, he was really done for this time. At this moment, the demon and Padian were locked in an intense battle in midair. When Lung Ruoxue reached their side, she released her meteor shower without a word. However, it was not a fire element meteor shower. Instead, it was a water element meteor shower, and it was very dense. The moment the water element meteor shower appeared, Puotian could sense it immediately. However, the godly skill that the demon had released was very close to him. Hence, he could only give up on avoiding Lung Ruoxue's meteor shower and focus on dealing with the demon. After all, he already knew that the meteor shower only looked scary, but in reality, its power was very ordinary. Hence, he placed most of his energy on the demon. After dozens of rounds of fighting, Puotian was quite surprised by the monster's strength. According to his previous experience, he should have defeated a monster with the strength of a divine emperor. However, this man did not show any signs of defeat. Instead, he was still extremely relaxed and calm. This fact made him feel quite depressed. However, if he knew that the evildoer had not used his full strength and was just teasing him, he would be even more depressed. After heaven-cleaving flash dodged the demon's divine skill, Lung Ruoxue's meteor shower also hit him. Other than the slight pain from his body, heaven-cleaving's clothes were all wet. The thin material of his clothes revealed his perfect, sturdy, and strong figure. When the demon saw this, he smiled helplessly. Then, he leaped to Lung Ruoxue's side and pulled her into his embrace. He said lovingly, "You're really naughty." Haha. Lung Ruoxue laughed happily when she saw Padian drenched like a chicken. Padian saw this and smiled indifferently. He looked at Lung Ruoxue affectionately and said, "So Shuer wants to see my naked body. You should have said so earlier. It's not like I don't want you to see it." After he finished speaking, he even looked at evildoer provocatively. The smile on his face was particularly proud and piercing. "Is Shuer something you should call? I don't care about your naked body. Don't think too highly of yourself." The demon and Lung Ruoxue said in unison. After Patian heard their conversation, he looked at the demon with an "so what if I did" expression. Then, he turned his gaze to Lung Ruoxue and smiled charmingly. "I know that women don't mean what they say." Shuer said she didn't want to see it, but she's probably thinking too much. After hearing this, Lung Ruoxue felt like puking. She wanted to tell him, "You're thinking too much. I'm just telling the truth." However, she could also see how narcissistic this Patian was, so she might as well not say anything to him and directly express it with her actions. In an instant, Lung Ruoxue made her move. This time, it was the same meteor shower, but it was of the fire element. Patian glanced at the fiery red meteor shower floating in the air. He did not care at all and did not even try to dodge because he was certain that Lung Ruoxue's divine skill could not hurt him. Hence, not only did he allow the fiery red meteor shower to hit him, he did not forget to take advantage of her. "Shue's heart really aches for me. She's afraid that I'll catch a cold, so she wants to help me dry my clothes." I'm so touched. The fiery red meteor rain hit Potion's body, drying his wet clothes before turning into starlight and entering Potion's skin. Lung Ruoxue, who had once again been taken advantage of, could not be bothered with Patian anymore. Otherwise, that fellow would definitely be even more insatiable. Hence, she immediately shut her mouth. The demon was surprisingly not angry. Seeing this, Patian was rather puzzled. Why didn't the two of them respond to his words? This was too abnormal. Just as Puotian was puzzled, he suddenly felt an even more intense pain in his body. Immediately after, it was as if his body was on fire, burning from the inside out, making him very uncomfortable. A burning smell floated out of nowhere. Seeing this, Puotian subconsciously lowered his head, only to find that his clothes were on fire. Chapter 1980. Who exactly are you? 3. Without thinking, Patian directly mobilized his divine power to suppress the heat in his body. A water attribute divine skill hit his body at the same time, and the fire was put out as expected. However, his clothes also became black and thin charcoal, hanging on his body on the verge of collapse, falling off with a touch. "It seems like Shuer really wants to admire my naked body." Patian was still taking advantage of him with his mouth, and his eyes were provoking the evildoer. Then, his body shook slightly, and his clothes that had been burnt to ashes were removed from his body. This time, he was really naked. However, he was not ashamed of it. On the contrary, he was proud of it. The smile on his face became even more lecherous, causing the evildoer's heart to burn with anger. However, the evildoer was still angry and immediately covered Lung Ruoxue's eyes. Even if she wanted to strip naked for Shuer to see, she had to ask him first. "Why is this old thing naked?" Suddenly, a surprised voice rang out beside Lung Ruoxue and the other two. Following that, Uncle Long leaped to their side and could not help but size Patian up. He clicked his tongue in wonder. "This body and skin are really not bad." Uncle Long praised as he watched. Potion's figure was indeed very good. His skin was also delicate and bronze in color. The muscles on his body were well defined, especially the muscles on his abdomen, which had clear and angular patterns. Coupled with his beautiful face, it was no wonder that so many women were crazy for him. "Are you envious?" Puotian said with a faint smile when he heard Uncle Long's familiar voice. However, he kept looking at the evildoer provocatively. "What's there to be envious of? He's just an exhibitionist." When the demon heard this, he sneered. At this time, he really wanted to cut the sky splitter into 8 pieces to vent the hatred in his heart. However, killing Patian seemed to be letting him off too easily. That's right. We're not envious." Uncle Long chuckled in agreement when he heard the demon's words. In fact, he was thinking that with Potion's figure and face, if he used them for other purposes, he would definitely make a lot of money. Fortunately, Patian didn't know what Uncle Long was thinking. Otherwise, he would have died of anger. The more Patian heard Uncle Long's voice, the more familiar it became. Finally, he couldn't help but ask, "Do we know each other?" "I don't know him." Uncle Long immediately denied it. They didn't know each other. They had only fought a few times. Since you don't know each other, then you can all go to hell. Patian suddenly said ruthlessly. Apart from Lung Ruoxue, he did not plan to keep anyone else in the house. From the corner of his eye, he saw that his subordinates had all been captured. They were all tied up and stacked together on the ground. This fact made Patian's heart burn with anger, and his killing intent grew even stronger. We're all going to die? Then what about you? Uncle Long asked curiously. He was a little puzzled. Did this guy not realize the current situation? The people on their side had all been cleaned up, and he was the only one left. Me? Of course, I'm going to take my woman to live a carefree life. Patian said matter-of-factly, the smile on his face becoming more and more unrestrained. However, when Uncle Long heard Patian's words, his face couldn't help but sink. He said, "Why are you still daydreaming? You're all alone. Do you think you can beat us? Even if all of you come at me together, it'll be easy for me to take care of you," Patian sneered. Really? Since you've made such a request, we won't let you down. My children! Everyone, let's attack together! Uncle Long shouted. Cheng Wu and the rest immediately surrounded him aggressively with a trace of anger on their faces. Of course, they weren't angry. They were angry at Uncle Long. This was because Uncle Long had robbed all of their opponents and not killed them. Instead, he had piled them up like garbage. This fact made them angry, and they didn't know what Uncle Long was up to. However, when Lung Ruoxue heard the words children from Uncle Long, she couldn't help but laugh out loud. She didn't expect Uncle Long to be so funny as well. These 3 words were so full of love. Girl, don't laugh. You don't have a share in this battle. After hearing Lung Ruoxue's laughter, Uncle Long indifferently reminded her. Why? When Lung Ruoxue heard this, she immediately asked. She couldn't help but feel disgusted. Was Uncle Long favoring men over women? Why was she not getting a share? She wasn't a flower vase that looked good. She also had very strong combat power, okay? That guy is naked. You'll get a sty from looking at it, so you can't participate in the battle. Uncle Long said in a domineering manner. His words made the demon extremely satisfied. This guy is mine, none of you have a share. The demon said, Brat, how can you keep all the food to yourself? Did he write your name on his body? How can you say that he's yours? Uncle Long was the first to be displeased by the demon's words. Although Cheng Wu and the rest were slightly dissatisfied, they did not dare to say such words. Otherwise, this evil man would definitely make things difficult for them. They couldn't take the risk, so they could only leave it to Uncle Long. I'm the only one eating? You're the ones who came to snatch it from me after the battle, all right? The demon said unhappily. He was half dead in his heart. Damn it. This was clearly a battle between him and Patian. How did it develop into a group battle in the end? He would not allow it. He would personally send this stinky man who had designs on Schwer back to his hometown. At the thought of this, the demon let go of Lung Ruoxue. Then he grabbed Patian's arm and teleported away with Patian, away from Uncle Long and the others who were staring at them like tigers. Seeing this, Uncle Long's anger directly rushed to the top of his head. Damned brat, you're really disloyal. Uncle Long stomped his feet in anger at the devilish action. When Lung Ruoxue saw this, she could only console him. Uncle Long, calm down. I'm also someone who was abandoned. You? How could that guy leave you behind? He's obviously afraid that you'll see another man's body, and afraid that we'll snatch it from him, so he took the heaven-breaking tribulation away. Uncle Long said, his head burning with anger. The next second, Uncle Long teleported to the pile of garbage and took them away with him. Not long after, a painful wail was heard by Lung Ruoxue and the others. Cheng Wu and the others shuddered. They guessed that Uncle Long was venting his anger. They wanted to do so too, but there was no one else for them to vent. There seemed to be someone else there. Everyone's eyes turned to Tu Liang, who was tied up by Baisu. Tu Liang felt some malicious gazes, so he simply closed his eyes and pretended to faint. He fainted just like that? Everyone was disappointed, but they didn't have any more ideas about him. Tu Liang finally let out a sigh of relief. At the same time, The evildoer had already brought Padian to the bottom of an unknown dark cliff. Padian looked at the gray, dark and ghostly place in front of him with surprise. He had a new understanding of the evildoer's strength. Are you really just a divine emperor? Padian couldn't believe it because he couldn't break free from this guy's grasp. Moreover, he always felt that this place was gloomy and uncomfortable. Moreover, he had never heard of such a place in the divine world. Didn't you see it? The demon said indifferently. I don't believe it. Puotian was very sure of his suspicion, but the demon didn't care if he believed it or not. It's up to you to believe it or not. However, I advise you to put on some clothes. It's very cold here, and the air isn't good. Don't get sick. The demon asked with a concerned look. However, his concern was like a cat crying and a mouse in Padian's eyes, so Padian naturally did not appreciate it. However, it was really cold here. Even though he had mobilized his divine power to protect his body, he still felt a bone-piercing chill. With a thought, a white armor appeared on Puotian's body, dispelling the cold. Looking at the armor, the evildoer thought to himself, what a flashy guy. Why does he have to be so eye-catching even when he's wearing armor? However, this was good too. At least it would save him some trouble. Thinking of this, the evildoer's beautiful face revealed a smirk. When Puotian saw the mysterious smile on the demon's face, his heart suddenly thumped, and a bad premonition welled up in his heart. He didn't know why, but he always felt that this place was very strange, and there were some strange rustling sounds. Just as he was thinking about this, he suddenly felt the air pressure around him lower, and the chill pierced straight into his soul. Immediately, he quivered and hurriedly mobilized the divine power in his body to resist it. Then, he couldn't help but ask, what is this place? He was already very sure that there was no such strange place in the immortal realm. This place? This place is usually called the ghost domain. The demon laughed as he spoke word by word. What? When Padian heard the words ghost realm, he was shocked. How did they come to the ghost realm? This was not a place that one could come and go as they pleased. Only dead people or gods could easily come here, but they were clearly still alive. Who are you? Puotian's face darkened and he asked vigilantly. He was even more bewildered. This person was clearly only a divine emperor, but he could bring him in and out of the ghost realm at will. He didn't even feel the shock of the space tearing. This was too unbelievable. Was that even possible? Was this guy lying to him? This wasn't a ghost realm at all? However, this was definitely not the divine realm. The divine realm did not have such a sinister place. After thinking about it, Padian became more and more confused. It was as if things had gone out of his control, and this made him, who was used to controlling the overall situation, feel a little flustered. Chapter 1981, Joyo City, 1. Does it matter who I am? With a devilish smile, he indifferently said. Although he liked to play cat and mouse, he had no intention of telling Mouse his identity. More importantly, he felt a sense of accomplishment when he saw Mouse's confused look. Therefore, Padian was destined to be a tragedy. How could he let go of a man who dared to have ideas about his woman? Originally, he had planned to kill Padian and get rid of the evil for the people. Unfortunately, he had changed his mind. Didn't Padian like women? Didn't he like to snatch other people's women? Then he would let him like and snatch as much as he wanted. However, from now on, he would definitely not like women anymore, but female ghosts. Especially the female ghost in this ghost realm, she was very compatible with the Heaven Splitter. The demon laughed evilly. Although there were many female ghosts that were not much different from human women, and some female ghosts might even be more beautiful, the female ghosts in the ghost realm were definitely not beautiful. After all, this was the first place that humans or gods came to after death. The ghosts here were only at the initial stage. Even if they were cultivators in their previous lives, if they wanted to enter the meditative state after coming here, they had to start from the beginning. Most of the ghosts were unable to cultivate. However, even though many ghosts were unable to cultivate, it did not prevent them from knowing what good things were. In other words, the Heaven Splitter was definitely a great supplement for the ghosts here. If she could be with him, Then even a weak ghost could embark on the path of cultivation and become a meditative cultivator. Although the Nine Nether Prison was the place where the souls of humans or gods went after their death, the basic situation of the Nine Nether Prison was similar to that of the divine world. It was divided into indigenous people, acquired souls, and forces. The natives of the Nine Nether Prison were born meditating cultivators. They had the highest status here, equivalent to the gods of the divine realm. These aboriginals were all the underlings of the master of the dark world and were under her command. As for the acquired souls, they had lost their memories and consciousness when they first arrived in the Nine Nether Prison. Even so, they would fight here and even devour each other. The souls that knew how to devour other souls were basically the stronger souls. Therefore, the situation in the Nine Nether Prison was even more brutal. However, this was allowed in the Nine Nether Prison because there were too many ghosts here. Although there were countless souls reincarnated every day in the Nine Nether Prison, it was still a problem to be full of souls. Therefore, devouring had become one of the main ways for the Nine Netherworld Prison to manage a large number of souls. However, devouring souls to cultivate was very slow, and the heaven cleaving was definitely the favorite tonic for many ghosts who meditated or wanted to embark on the path of meditation. That was why he had brought the heaven splitter here. In this place, even if Pation had great ability, it was very difficult to leave. He would never let Pation have the opportunity to leave this place. Thinking of this, the demon's mood became better. Of course it's important. Hearing the demon's words, Pation gritted his teeth. Damn this guy, why is his words so infuriating? If it wasn't important, would I ask you? But I didn't plan to tell you. The demon laughed and said in an infuriating manner. The evildoer was so angry that he couldn't say anything. He had lived for so long and had never seen such a detestable man. He was really too annoying. What about me? You can have fun here. I'm sure you'll have an unforgettable experience here. The demon laughed and disappeared. Damn it. Come back. Come back here. Seeing that the demon had left just like that, Pation anxiously roared out. His voice reverberated in the empty bottom of the cliff, but unfortunately, the demon had long disappeared without a trace. Suddenly, Pation felt a rustling sound not far away. The sound grew louder and louder, and the gloomy and terrifying aura became thicker and thicker. Suddenly, he felt a chill run down his spine. Could it really be some ghost realm? In fact, he had always been skeptical of the devilish man's words, but now he was not so sure. Just as Pation was bewildered, a few ugly female ghosts suddenly appeared beside him. These female ghosts had pale faces, their eyes protruded out of their eye sockets, their tongues stuck out a foot long, drooling, and their dull eyes were shining as they looked at Pation. Their figures were illusionary and translucent. They floated around him and laughed gloomily. It was obvious that these female ghosts were only beginner-level ghosts. He glanced at the female ghost who was drooling at him, and he was furious. With a wave of his hand, the soul of the female ghost beside him was immediately scattered, and she did not even have the chance to reincarnate. But immediately after, more ghosts came from all directions and rushed in his direction. Looking at the dense gray-white light spots not far away, Patien's head was in a big mess, but he also completely believed the evildoer's words. This place was indeed the ghost realm. Damn it! How did that guy have the ability to bring him here? Pation couldn't figure it out no matter how hard he thought about it. However, although he had never been here before, he knew that it wasn't so easy to leave this place. From this moment on, the tragic journey to the Nine Nether Prison had officially begun. These ghosts were just child's play. After the demon left the ghost domain, he went back to the main city of the Nine Nether Prison, Nine Nether City. It was also his main residence in the Nine Nether Prison. Although Joyo City belonged to the Nine Nether Prison, it was not as gloomy as the other places in the prison. In fact, the scenery here was like a painting, the environment was beautiful, the sky was blue, and there were a few beautiful clouds floating in the sky. No matter how you looked at it, it was hard to imagine that this was the main city of the Nine Nether Prison. The residents of Joyo City were also the meditation cultivators with the highest status in the 9 Nether prison. They knew how to enjoy life even better than the gods in the god realm. They spent all their time outside of cultivation on enjoying food and beautiful women. His days were extremely carefree. It could be said that in an environment like the 9 Nether prison, they had seen through life and death and enjoyed life. Although they did not live in the divine world, the most powerful among them had the strength of a hierarch, and they could also exist eternally like a hierarch. However, the 9 Nether prison and the divine world were two different top-notch worlds, so once one cultivated to a certain level in meditation, they would be called the underworld god. As soon as the demon stepped into the territory of Joyo City, he was immediately detected. Looking at Mu Li, who appeared in front of him with a charming face, the demon frowned and said with a slight displeasure, "What are you doing here?" Did this guy not know that he wanted to keep a low profile? Now that he had appeared, she would definitely be surrounded. This was because Mu Li was not only his right-hand man, but also the manager of Joyo City's external affairs, which was also the city lord on the surface. As expected, not long after Mu Li appeared, the meditation cultivators in Joyo City noticed the situation here. Mu Li was too famous in Joyo City. Many people might not know the Dark Lord, but no one would not know Mu Li. Chapter 1982, Joyo City, 2. When Mu Li heard the demon's words, she immediately pouted her lips and tears welled up in her eyes. She sobbed and said in a soft voice, "My lord, I missed you so much. You've finally returned. What do you want me to do? Get lost? Don't act pitiful in front of me." Seeing Mu Li's behavior, the demon was so scared that he shook his body and goosebumps fell all over. Did Mu Li take the wrong medicine? Why did it look like this? The demon was puzzled. After all, Mu Li had always been very normal in his eyes. But now, if you can't understand, then don't think about it. The demon didn't pay attention to Mu Li and teleported back to his palace. Seeing this, Mu Li secretly laughed and immediately followed. Sitting on the dark golden throne, the evildoer glared at Mu Li with a cold face and said unwillingly, "Why did you suddenly become a mother? Did you change your gender?" It's just that I haven't seen the Lord for too long, so I'm too excited." Mu Li explained with a black face. It seemed that his performance had frightened the Lord. I've sinned." "Oh really? But no matter how I look at it, you don't seem to be overly excited." The demon said indifferently. "Then what does it look like?" Mu Li asked dumbly. His Lord's words were getting more and more meaningful. He hadn't been by his Lord's side for too long, and he felt that he was out of date. "It seems to be spring. Do you want me to find you a companion?" The demon laughed. No need. I'm not interested in women." "I can't," Mu Li said in a hurry. The women of the Netherworld realm were too scary. He couldn't stand them. "Are you not interested in women? That means she's interested in men?" "Let me think, I've just gotten a stunningly handsome man from the divine realm, and his looks are not inferior to mine. You'll definitely like him." The demon muttered to himself, causing Mu Li to break out in cold sweat. She couldn't help but cry in her heart, "Master, let me go. I was really just playing around with you just now. You don't have to do this to me, do you?" Mu Li was so anxious that she was about to cry, because she knew that her lord never went back on her words. Glancing at Mu Li's ugly expression, the demon smiled again and said, "Mu Li, I left that person in the ghost domain. You should go there and find him. Otherwise, I'm afraid he'll be gnawed to death by the female ghosts there." He left her in the ghost realm? Hearing the demon's words, Mu Li couldn't help but shiver. How much hatred did his lord have with that person? He had actually left her in the ghost realm. One had to know that the ghosts in the ghost realm were all hungry ghosts who had been thirsty for many years. They would go crazy when they saw a fresh human. Although he had yet to see that person, he could already imagine the tragic end of that person. He just didn't know how long that person could last in the ghost realm. If he was played to death by those ghosts in a short time, would his lord be angry? In an instant, Mu Li's mind turned 1,000 times, and countless possible outcomes flashed through his mind. Suddenly, he began to worry for the unlucky guy. He was not worried that he would be treated as a tonic by ghosts, but that he would not live long enough and ruin his lord's mood. Thinking of this, Mu Li quickly said, "Don't worry, my lord, you'll get someone to take good care of him." "Who asked you to take care of him? I'm just sincerely trying to find you a companion. Otherwise, you'll be so lonely." The demon asked with a concerned look. "My lord, this subordinate is not lonely. It's true," Mu Li said with certainty. If his lord still didn't believe him, he would have to buy a piece of tofu and die to prove his will. It's all his fault. What kind of joke is he playing with his lord? Now, the lord has taken revenge. Are you sure? The demon didn't seem to believe it. "I'm sure. I'm very sure." Mu Li nodded repeatedly. "If that's the case, I won't force you. However, if you're really lonely, you must tell me. You can choose any man in the netherworld. If there's no one you like here, you'll go to the divine realm to help you find one. In short, he'll find you a man that you like to keep you company." The demon said seriously. His handsome face was full of seriousness. "Thank you, my lord." Mu Li wanted to cry but had no tears. Why did his lord only think about finding a man for him? In fact, he did not like men either. However, he didn't dare to say this again. Otherwise, who knew what kind of mutant his lord would make for him? There's no need to be so polite. Although you're my subordinate to the outside world, in my heart, you're like my family. So, I should make more plans for you. The demon laughed. In fact, his words were not a joke. Among all his subordinates, he trusted Mu Li the most. Mu Li had followed him for the longest time. Although they were master and servant, they were like brothers. After he had Shuer, he naturally hoped that this subordinate who had been alone for many years would find a good home. Of course, finding him a man was purely a joke. Who asked Mu Li to act pitiful when she saw him just now? How could she feel balanced if she didn't punish him? "Thank you, my lord." Mu Li only knew how to say this and didn't dare to say anything else. Otherwise, he was afraid that he would arouse the thoughts of his lord again. After a while, Mu Li couldn't resist his curiosity and asked, "How long does my lord plan to stay in Jiuyou City?" In fact, what he wanted to ask was, what did his lord need this subordinate to do when he returned to Jiuyou City? However, he didn't dare to ask too directly now. Otherwise, if his lord threw the guy who was left in the ghost realm to him, he would have to find a place to cry. However, even if he didn't ask that, the demon had planned to throw the Heavenbreaker to him. However, it was for him to monitor and cause some trouble for the Heavenbreaker. "He'll leave in a while. As for the person I threw in the ghost domain, you have to entertain him well. That guy is a lecherous man, so let him see the beauties of our 9 nether prisons so that he doesn't come here for nothing." The demon ordered. This subordinate will not let you down." Mu Li wiped the cold sweat on her forehead and hurriedly replied. She couldn't help but secretly complain in her heart, "Is he a lecherous person? Could it be that he was perverting that little devil? No wonder his master was so angry." Stealing a glance at the gloomy-looking evildoer, Mu Li was even more certain that the man must have had ideas about the little devil. Otherwise, he would not have been punished by his lord like this. As for the little devil in his heart, he was referring to Lung Ruoxue. Fortunately, Lung Ruoxue didn't know what Mu Li thought of her. Otherwise, Mu Li would be the one in trouble. "Remember, take a picture of everything he did in the ghost realm for me to remember," the demon said after nodding. "Yes." Mu Li's little heart trembled as she replied. She took a picture as a memento. Her lord was so ruthless. However, he had to strictly carry out his lord's words, so he would definitely do it well. "I can't let my lord down." After the demon had settled everything, he immediately left the 9 nether prison and returned to the divine world. Chapter 1983, Jiuyou City, 3, because he had missed Shuer in just a short while. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue and the rest were still outside the house. They were listening to the wailing sounds coming from not too far away. They were staring at Tu Liang, who had pretended to be unconscious and was woken up. At this moment, Lung Ruoxue felt herself being pulled into the embrace of a strong arm. The familiar aura made her know without a doubt that the person who was holding her was the evildoer. "You're back," Lung Ruoxue said happily as she leaned into the evildoer's arms. What's going on?" the demon nodded and asked. Everyone was looking at the same person, but the pile of trash on the ground was gone. "Has it been dealt with?" After you took Patian away, Uncle Long was angry, so he took those trash away to vent his anger. We were bored, so we had to look after him." Lung Ruoxue pointed at Tu Liang and explained. "Oh, he's really lucky." The demon smiled faintly. However, when Tu Liang heard his words, he couldn't help but feel disgusted. "Lucky my ass. He was so unlucky. Although he was treated better than the others, he was still a piece of meat on the anvil. He had no freedom. By the way, how's that Patian doing now?" Lung Ruoxue asked again with a smile. Patian had been taken away by the demon, but that fellow had yet to return. The demon wouldn't have killed him, right? She could not help but think to herself. After hearing her question, Tu Liang couldn't help but prick up his ears to listen. At this time, he was very concerned about Potion's whereabouts, because he knew that the only person who could save them now was Patian. Unfortunately, this demon had returned alone, and he was not injured at all. As a result, his big brother was probably in danger. Thinking of this, he became even more worried, but he did not dare to show it. "That guy is so good. He's happily touring around my territory." The demon laughed evilly. "Your territory?" When Lung Ruoxue heard this, black lines formed on her forehead. Wasn't that the Nine Nether prison? That was a place where people or gods would go after they died, so she didn't think there was anything good to go there for sightseeing. In her opinion, Patian's situation there could be described as deep water and hot fire. After all, how could the demon let Patian live a good life there? In fact, Potion's current situation was even more serious than she had thought. However, when Tu Liang heard that Patian was still alive, he was relieved. After all, in his opinion, the heaven-crushing power was unfathomable. As long as he was alive, he would be able to make a name for himself no matter where he was. Therefore, he was not worried about what the demon said. Unfortunately, he had miscalculated this time. "You little brat. You're back pretty quickly." Suddenly, a deafening roar rang in Lung Ruoxue's and the others' ears. They turned their heads in unison and saw Uncle Long carrying the pile of rubbish on his shoulders. He was standing not too far away with a face full of anger. As for the trash in his hands, they looked extremely haggard at this time. Their faces were dark and their clothes were in tatters. Their exposed skin was full of green and purple marks. Seeing this scene, everyone's heart was like a cat scratching. What was going on? What did Uncle Long do to them? Why did each and every one of them seem to have been squeezed dry? "I'm still all right." Hearing Uncle Long's angry words, the demon smiled calmly. "Where did you put the heaven splitter? Give it back to me, I still need to use it to earn money." Uncle Long continued, his face full of anger. However, when they heard Uncle Long say that he wanted to use the sky-breaking technique to complain about money, everyone's curiosity was even greater. They really wanted to know what that pretty boy could do. "I'm afraid he doesn't have the time to make money for you now." After listening to what Uncle Long said, the demon laughed. That was because that fellow was currently busy dealing with the female ghosts in the ghost domain. But Uncle Long was confused. "He's very busy." "I'm sorry," the demon said softly. After that, he stopped talking. No matter how much Uncle Long asked, the demon wouldn't say anything. Uncle Long was so angry that he stomped his feet. Cheng Wu and the others quickly changed the topic to comfort Uncle Long. "Uncle Long, do you have any good ideas to make money?" Cheng Wu asked with great interest. "Of course." Uncle Long nodded with certainty. "Uncle Long, tell me about it. Let's be happy too." Cheng Wu said excitedly. Although he had not known Uncle Long for a long time, he had never thought that Uncle Long would actually have an idea to earn money. This was really beyond his expectations. "I've decided to open a brothel." Uncle Long's bright eyes glanced at the people present, then announced loudly, "What's a brothel?" Cheng Wu and the rest were confused, their faces were filled with question marks. "It's a place for people to enjoy themselves. As long as I have enough money, the guests can do whatever they want." Uncle Long explained simply. His face was burning and he was a little embarrassed. However, Cheng Wu and the rest still did not understand. Seeing Cheng Wu and the others staring at him shamelessly, Uncle Long had a headache. Did he not understand what he said? Were these people even men? He didn't even know what the brothel was for. The spring house is the so-called place to seek pleasure. At this moment, Lu Feng's voice cut in. Everyone turned around and saw First Elder and the others walking out of the house. "Arg! It can't be!" Cheng Wu shouted in disbelief. Uncle Long's business was too. But, did such a place exist in the divine realm? Why had he never heard of it? Not what? That's right. Uncle Long patted Cheng Wu's head and said unhappily, "Really? What's the fuss about? The brothel was not a place that could not be seen. Uncle Long, there's such a place in the divine realm?" After a long while, Cheng Wu, who had been beaten up, finally reacted and stuttered. "What's wrong with the divine realm? The people of the immortal realm only have higher cultivation levels than those of the lower realm and live longer. In fact, in my opinion, there is no substantial difference between the people of the immortal realm and the mortals. They all have needs. As the saying goes, there will only be a market if there is a need. Thus, brothels are not illegal in the divine realm." Uncle Long explained calmly, but in his heart, he couldn't help but add, "But it's still illegal. After all, many gods thought highly of themselves and would naturally not put this kind of thing out in the open. We're the ones who are ignorant." Cheng Wu quickly admitted his mistake. Uncle Long, on the account of his good attitude, did not bother about his ignorance. Lu Feng, who was very curious about Uncle Long's thoughts, couldn't help but ask in more detail, "Uncle Long, if you want to go to Kai Chun Lu, where can we find the service staff?" "They can do it." Uncle Long pointed at the trash that he was still carrying and added, "Originally, that guy Patian could have become the #1 of my spring brothel, but unfortunately he was taken away by this stinky brat. What a pity! What a waste of such a beautiful face. With him around, how many people will be attracted to my brothel?" After he finished speaking, Uncle Long's face revealed an extremely regretful expression. Lung Ruoxue and the rest were dumbfounded, and black lines appeared on their foreheads. So this was the reason why Uncle Long was so concerned about Heaven Splitter. Now, Cheng Wu and the others did not know if Patian was lucky or unlucky. Because no matter if he fell into the hands of Uncle Long or the hands of the evildoer, he was destined to not have a good life. "Uncle Long, you're my idol." After a long while, the stunned Lu Feng finally spoke up. He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead without making a sound. He could finally see that no matter who he offended, he could not offend the people around Lung Ruoxue. None of these people were kind. It's good that you're not the subject of vomiting." Uncle Long teased before he asked Lu Feng seriously, "The Lu family's kid. Do you want to work part-time in my brothel and earn some extra money or something? With your qualities, Uncle Long can guarantee that you'll be famous throughout the entire divine realm. How about it? Consider it." No need to consider. I'm not interested in this industry." Uncle Long's words scared Lu Feng so much that his face turned pale. He quickly refused and hid behind the First Elder to seek protection. He was afraid. He was afraid that the overlord Uncle Long would force himself on him and use him to make up the numbers. Seeing Lu Feng's frightened expression, Lung Ruoxue and the others laughed out loud in a good mood. Then, they walked back to the house and prepared some food to celebrate. During the banquet, Lu Feng went up to Lung Ruoxue and gloated, "Shui, you didn't let us go out and fight with Patian and the others, but we didn't manage to fight either." In fact, he had wanted to say this before he went out, but he was so scared by Uncle Long that he didn't have the chance to say it. However, if he didn't say it, he would be very tempted, so he found this opportunity to say it. The moment Lu Feng said this, Lung Ruoxue only smiled faintly and said, "Yup. I didn't get it, but I think you're even more depressed and bored than I am. Why don't I suggest to Uncle Long and ask him to make you the number one in his brothel? Look at this little face, this little figure, how attractive. I'm sure many people will like it. After Lung Ruoxue finished speaking, she even leered at Lu Feng like a lecher. Lu Feng's little heart trembled as he looked at her. His face turned paler and paler. He knew that this little devil would definitely do what she said. Now he really regretted it. Why did he provoke her for no reason? Wasn't this asking for it? Shuer, I was just joking with you. You can treat my words as farts. After giving it some thought, Lu Feng hurriedly tried to salvage the situation. After he finished speaking, he did not wait for Lung Ruoxue's reaction and went back to his room to hide without even turning his head. Chapter 1984. The Yao Family's Rage, 1. Haha. Seeing that Lu Feng was running faster than a rabbit, Lung Ruoxue's mood brightened and she laughed happily. When the demon beside her saw this, he smiled helplessly and said, Shui, you're so naughty. When Uncle Long heard Lung Ruoxue's laughter, he walked over and pretended to be displeased. Little girl, you're too evil. You actually used me to scare him. Haha. Hearing Uncle Long's words, Lung Ruoxue's smile widened. After laughing, Lung Ruoxue turned serious and said, Uncle Long, are you really planning to open a brothel? She felt that Uncle Long was probably joking. However, Uncle Long's face was serious as he said, Of course. Girl, Kai Chun Lu will be very profitable. We need money. With money, I'll be able to show off my skills in the divine realm. Therefore, I've decided that in the future, I'll make money my main goal. As for those captives, let them earn money for me. I can't keep them for nothing. After hearing Uncle Long's words, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but think deeply. In fact, compared to money, she felt that she needed all kinds of herbs and/or materials more. With these things, she could easily accumulate a lot of popularity and many people would want to make friends with her. These were the biggest capital to deal with fog ice. After thinking for a long time, Lung Ruoxue finally spoke, Uncle Long, since you have such an idea, then go ahead and do it. If there's anything you need my help with, just let me know. Arg. Little girl, I didn't expect you to support me so much. Uncle Long was very surprised. After all, in his opinion, a brothel was not a decent place. He thought that this girl would let him do whatever he wanted and would not ask about it. Didn't Uncle Long do it for us? Lung Ruoxue said. Little girl, I didn't dote on you for nothing. Hearing Lung Ruoxue's words, Uncle Long was extremely happy. He was indeed doing this for Lung Ruoxue and the others. After all, if a power didn't have wealth, it would be impossible for it to develop. As for those top-notch forces that were deeply rooted in the immortal realm, which one of them wasn't rich enough to rival a country? Although Shuer was very rich compared to some people, when compared to the entire power, Shuer's money was not enough. One had to know that Shuer only had a few people by her side. And how many people were there in those top forces? In terms of numbers alone, Shuer could not be compared to them. Therefore, besides money, Shuer needed talent more. This was the result of his careful consideration during this period of time. Although he was not sure that Lung Ruoxue had the same intention, after seeing the Wen family head, Black 1, Black 4, and Sky Piercer attacking one after another, he knew that Shuer should be thinking about her development plan. Otherwise, why would these people dare to bully Shuer and only come to find trouble with her? Why didn't they dare to go to the Ning family's divine realm? Why didn't he dare to go to the Wen family's god realm? To put it bluntly, it was because Shuer's reputation was not as good as theirs. After thinking through all this, the first thing he thought of was to make money. Otherwise, how depressing would it be if he had talent but no money to support them? Now that Lung Ruoxue had expressed that she was willing to support him, his interest in earning money was even stronger. Looking at how eager Uncle Long was, Lung Ruoxue couldn't help but ask, Uncle Long, where do you want to open the brothel? Let's just open it in the land of the demons. It'll be easier for us to manage it this way. Moreover, there are many beasts in the land of the demons. They are also our potential customers, Uncle Long said after some thought. Previously, he had not thought about the location of the brothel. He only thought about it after Lung Ruoxue asked him, "The land of the evil demons? Will this place work?" Lung Ruoxue was doubtful. Actually, what she wanted to say was that they were in the middle of nowhere, so how could Kai Chun House have business? However, seeing that Uncle Long was so excited, she really couldn't bear to dispel his enthusiasm. Forget it. As long as Uncle Long liked it, she would let him open a place in the Devil's Land. Anyway, she didn't expect that the business would make money. The reason why she agreed to let Uncle Long open a brothel was that she was afraid that Uncle Long would be too bored. Alright, little Schwer, you have to believe in my eyes. Spring brothels were not opened in bustling places. After all, people who dared to come to spring brothels would not want others to know that they had been here. Therefore, this is the best place to go. Uncle Long said with certainty. If that's the case, then Uncle Long will do as you wish. He'll get Chengwu and the others to cooperate with you. If you need anything else, just let me know. Lung Ruoxue warned. Yes, yes. Uncle Long nodded. Uncle Long was definitely a man of action. After he made his decision, he brought Chengwu and the others to find a place the next day. Half a month later, Uncle Long, Chengwu and the others, who left early and returned late every day, appeared in front of Lung Ruoxue with happy faces. Looking at Lung Ruoxue, Uncle Long said happily, "Shue, our brothel has been built. Do you want to go and take a look?" Uncle Long's face was full of anticipation as he said this. So fast. Lung Ruoxue was a little surprised. These people's methods were very efficient. It's not fast. If it wasn't for Uncle Long's high expectations, I would have finished it a week ago. Cheng Wu said with a mysterious look. Then I really have to go and take a look. Lung Ruoxue's curiosity was piqued. Then what are we waiting for? Hurry up and come with us. Uncle Long said hurriedly. After he finished speaking, he pulled Lung Ruoxue and walked out of the door. Demon and the rest saw this and quickly followed. Uncle Long had chosen the location of the brothel to be at the foot of the mountain at the entrance to the Devil's Land. When Lung Ruoxue and the rest arrived, they saw a magnificent and majestic palace-like building standing in front of them. This palace was 2 stories high, with gold as the main color tone and red as a secondary color. The stone used in the building was also the toughest and most translucent golden crystal. After entering, the first floor was a large hall for guests to dine and watch songs and dance. The second floor was full of rooms. Although each room was not very big, it was well equipped and the decorations in the rooms were also extremely exquisite. They were definitely put in effort. After looking around, the great elder couldn't help but ask the question in his heart. I say, Uncle Long, why does this house look so familiar? Are my eyes playing tricks on me? The great elder's face was filled with confusion. When Uncle Long heard the great elder's words, he laughed proudly and said, "You're not seeing things. This house is an imitation of the old Yao's house, but it's not as big as his. It can be considered a miniature version." Ah! When the crowd heard Uncle Long's words, they were all speechless. How badly did the head of the Yao family offend Uncle Long? If the Yao family knew that Uncle Long had built a brothel in the style of the Yao family's house, they would probably vomit blood. However, they believed that if a person from the immortal realm came here to spend money, he would definitely be very happy, because it was equivalent to living in the Yao family. On the surface, this place is a guest house, but it's a guest house that provides special services. What do you guys think about calling it Yao Jialu? Uncle Long glanced at everyone's expressions and said calmly, "You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.